One early autumn morning, a gentle breeze drifted through the window. Naomi, my daughter-in-law, arrived with my son, carrying a stack of papers and a smile as sweet as honey. "Mother, could you please sign this for us? It's just an insurance contract," she said, her voice soft, too soft, almost fake. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised with my whole life, sitting in silence, avoiding my gaze, waiting for me to sign away everything. I picked up the pen, smiled, and signed, but deliberately made a wrong stroke. They thought I was old, no longer clear-headed. But I've spent my life teaching others how to see through deceit, and today I chose silence, just to see how far they would go with their act. No one knew that inside my handbag was the final envelope Harold left behind, the one that would turn this signing day into their end. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I'm Beatrice Langston, 69, a widow, living in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington. I spent my whole life as a high school teacher, teaching American literature and ethics. I believe kindness is the most important thing people can pass on to one another, but perhaps I taught that to the wrong people. My husband, Harold, passed away 8 years ago from a stroke. He was a civil engineer, a principled, steady man who loved his family more than anything. After he died, I lived alone in the white wooden house we built together in North Seattle, the place that once echoed with the laughter of my son, Evan. Evan used to be a polite, bright boy who always said, "Mom, you'll be the first person I buy a house for." I believed that until he married Naomi. Naomi is beautiful, modern, and always knows how to make others feel small. She's an influencer, often live streaming her outfits, her meals, and talking about the perfect life of a successful woman. At first, I tried to love and support her like a good mother-in-law. But gradually I realized Naomi didn't love Evan. She loved the Langston name and this family's wealth. 3 weeks ago, I received an unexpected call from Evan. "Mom, we want to see you. There's something important about insurance that we need you to sign right away." I was a bit surprised, but I agreed. After all, they're my children. I didn't know it would be the fateful meeting where my own son and daughter-in-law would begin to deceive me. The family meeting took place in their newly built 2-story house. There was a pool, luxury furnishings, and the air smelled of expensive perfume. Naomi greeted me with a flawless smile. "Oh, Mom, you're here. We just need you to sign a few small papers so insurance can update the inheritance in case something bad happens." Her voice was so sweet it gave me a headache. I sat on the leather chair and looked at the paper in front of me. At the top it said, "Property Transfer and Liability Release Form." Not insurance at all. This was a full asset transfer. I asked gently, "Are you sure this is an insurance form, Naomi?" She smiled, a flicker of unease in her eyes. "Yes, Mom." "You don't need to worry." I already asked a lawyer. I glanced at the bottom right corner. The certifying attorney wasn't Floyd Patterson, who'd worked with my husband for 20 years, but a stranger. Evan said hurriedly, "Mom, please sign quickly. We have to submit it before Monday. It's just a formality." I sat quietly and looked at my son. His eyes were no longer those of the boy who used to bring me flowers on Teacher Appreciation Day. They held only impatience and worry that I would refuse. I said nothing. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling not from age but from holding back anger. I wrote slowly, deliberately altering the first letter of my name. Then I set the pen down and smiled. "All done," I signed. Naomi gathered the paper, glanced at it, and beamed. "Thank you, Mom. We'll send it to the lawyer right away." Evan held my hand and said, "You're wonderful. I promise, you won't have to worry about a thing." I looked at that hand, the same hand that once held mine when he learned to write. Now it was cold, rigid, and unfamiliar. I stayed a little longer, pretending to sip tea, and looked around the house. On the wall was their wedding photo, and next to it a frame of me and Harold, but dust had gathered on the frame. No one bothered to wipe it. Naomi stood up, clearing the dishes as she spoke. "Oh, Mom, we're thinking of remodeling your house. Once the ownership is transferred, I'll help redecorate it to be more modern, okay?" I gave a thin smile. "Sure, do whatever you think is convenient." But inside, I knew from today on, they didn't just want my house. They wanted my life. On the drive home, a light rain fell in Seattle. I drove slowly, turned on the radio, but couldn't listen to a thing. My hand gripped my purse. Inside was the blue envelope Harold left 8 years ago. I had never dared open it, thinking it was meant for when I was at my weakest, and perhaps today is that moment. I pulled over by Green Lake and watched couples strolling in the rain. When an older woman like me is deceived by her children, people only say, "Poor lady." No one knows that behind the silence, there's a storm. I took out the envelope but didn't open it. I just traced the words Harold had written in his own hand. "Open only if you are betrayed." I smiled. For 8 years I'd lived like a faithful wife and a selfless mother. But from this moment on, I would live like a woman who knows her worth. That night, I didn't sleep. I made tea, opened an old notebook, and began recording every detail from the afternoon. Naomi's eyes, Evan's voice, the lawyer's name, the time, and even the altered signature I'd intentionally made. Everything I recorded it like a lesson plan, preparing for the final lesson of my life. Before going to bed, I whispered to myself, "If they want to play this game, I'll play it to the end. But this time, I'm the one writing the rules." I closed the notebook and looked up at Harold's photo on the wall. His smile was as gentle as ever, but his eyes seemed to remind me, "You have never been alone." When dawn slipped through the window, I brewed coffee, put on Harold's old knit cardigan, and looked out at the yard. The morning dew reflected light like glass. I took a deep breath and clenched the blue envelope in my hand. "Harold," I whispered, "it's time to open it." And from that moment, the real game began. My hand trembled as I held that pale blue envelope. It had sat in the wooden drawer for 8 years, along with Harold's handkerchief and the letters he sent while working in Oregon. The seal had yellowed. Harold's handwriting was still clear, slanted, just like his script. "Open only if you are betrayed." I never thought the day would come when I'd have to open it. But when my son and daughter-in-law pushed me to the brink of loss, I understood Harold had foreseen this long ago. I slit the envelope open. Inside were 2 items, a neatly folded sheet of paper and a small silver USB drive. The paper was a handwritten will, notarized by Floyd Patterson. The first line tightened my chest. "I, Harold Langston, being of sound mind, make this will to ensure that all assets, including real estate, company shares, and retirement funds, belong to my wife Beatrice Langston for the remainder of her life. No one, including my son, is permitted to transfer or interfere in any form while she is alive." At the end, Harold added, "If you're reading this, it means you've endured the pain I feared most. But don't be afraid, Beatrice. Truth always stands with the righteous." I pressed the paper to my chest. It felt like he was holding me again. The USB had a small tape label. "When you need the truth, it will speak." I plugged it into my laptop. A single folder appeared. Langston, Evidence. 3 files, dated 0604, 2017, 0911, 2018, 12/06, 2020. The first file, office camera video. Harold sat across from Floyd. Harold: "Floyd, if I'm gone, I want everything to go directly to B." Floyd: "You worried about Evan?" Harold: "I love my son, but Naomi is too ambitious. I'm afraid if we don't prepare, B will be the one who pays." The second file, an audio recording. Harold recounting how Naomi once suggested helping manage assets, while Floyd advised not to let her know all the account numbers. The last file. Harold looked straight into the camera, voice steady. B. If you're watching this, it means I'm no longer here. This USB contains evidence of your legal ownership. If anyone tries to take it away, go see Floyd. Don't react too quickly. Let them show their true faces. I burst into tears. Not from fear, but from being loved and protected even after he was gone. Night fell. Seattle rain mixed with the sound of wind through the leaves. I opened my notebook and wrote clean lines like prepping a lesson. Time, file names, instructions, next actions. Then I put the will in the safe, and the USB I hid in the picture frame with a secret compartment Harold once carved it to store important drawings. I found my old contacts and called Floyd Patterson. His voice was warm, gravelly, and genuine. B? How long has it been? Harold must be smiling somewhere. I swallowed. Floyd, I need to see you. About Harold's will. He paused for a few beats and said, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, the old office. I set the phone down. Silence, dew on the window pane. The house seemed to exhale with me. I made tea, opened another notebook, my planning book. I wrote in large letters at the top, do not react quickly. Underneath, I bullet pointed. 1. Meet Floyd, confirm legality, asset protection plan. 2. Don't argue with Evan divided by Naomi. Record audio. Take notes, collect coercive behavior. 3. Pretend to cooperate, let them think I'm weak and will keep signing. 4. Secure storage, copy the USB to another drive, store in 2 places. 5. Prepare forgetful language, practice vague, hesitant lines. I practiced exactly that. I don't remember. What was that paper the other day? Naomi, help me, with the signature. I'm afraid I'll sign it wrong. Evan, I'm old now. I trust you too. Those sentences, every word, I swallowed, velvet wrapping a blade. I stood before the mirror and looked into my own eyes. Still me, but with a new layer of resolve. I practiced smiling slowly, dipping my head slightly, so others would think I was fragile. Every gesture had intent not to perform for an audience, but to set a trap for those who underestimated me. I replayed Harold's video. I paused at the moment he said, "Don't react too quickly." I wrote that sentence on a small slip of paper and tucked it into my wallet. I also wrote, "Dignity is not for bargaining." Late at night, I stood on the porch watching the rain fall straight like silver threads. When he was alive, Harold used to call Seattle's rain the city's background music. I closed my eyes and felt my heartbeat blend with that melody. I wasn't afraid anymore. I just felt calm. Before sleep, I did something very teacher-like. Compiled evidence. I printed screenshots of Naomi's video flaunting number Langston Estate, noted the time, saved the link. I photographed the fake insurance contract, circling the property transfer and liability release. I marked the unfamiliar lawyer's name. I even noted Evan's attitude that day, avoiding eye contact, urging me to sign, saying just a formality. I placed everything into a hard folder labeled Evidence, Copy 1. Copy 2 held the duplicated USB. Copy 3 was a byte of 2. Hidden folder on my hard drive, passworded with my and Harold's wedding date. Morning crept in. I poured coffee into the old mug that reads, "World's kindest teacher, Evan's gift from 5th grade." I touched those words and felt a slight ache. Kindest, yes, kind but not naive. I changed into a knit cardigan, put the will and the backup USB in my bag. I stuck a note on the door. Breathe deep. Don't react quickly. Let them talk. I tidied the table, pulled the curtain, and locked the door. Outside, Seattle's sky was bright blue after a night of rain. I stepped down the porch and took a long, steady breath. At 10 o'clock, I would go to Harold's old office, the place where our story began, and perhaps the place where I'd begin again. I got in the car and buckled my seatbelt. The kindest teacher mug rested in the cup holder, trembling slightly as the engine started. I placed my hands on the wheel and smiled faintly. "Harold," I said to the mirror, "I'll meet you in memory. As for me, I'm going to see Floyd." The car rolled forward. The road ahead was dry, straight, and long. Inside the cabin, the radio murmured just enough to hear, like a whisper, "Don't be afraid." I wasn't afraid anymore. I just wanted what was right. And the truth is, the game had only just begun. The next morning, Seattle lay under a thin veil of fog, soft as breath. I drove to the old law office, the brainchild of Harold and Floyd. Nearly 8 years had passed since I set foot there, yet everything seemed to stand still in memory. The red brick building, the polished brass nameplate, and the little bell on the door that rang whenever someone walked in. Floyd was the same grayer hair, but bright, steady eyes full of composure. When he saw me, he stood up and offered a faint, wistful smile. "B, you got here earlier than I expected." I gave a tired smile back. "Thank you for taking a last-minute meeting. I think, Harold, I trusted you enough to know I'd need you one day." He gestured toward the leather chair opposite him. "Have a seat, B. We have a lot to talk about." Floyd took a thick brown file from a drawer labeled Estate of Harold Langston. He opened it and slid it toward me. "This is Harold's official will, filed with the Washington State Department of Justice. I checked this morning. There has never been a request to cancel or replace it." Which means, he paused, looking me straight in the eyes, "You're the sole legal heir, B. No one, not even Evan, has the right to touch the assets while you're alive." I sat still, feeling my heartbeat slow and heavy. A strange mix of comfort and pain spread through my chest. Harold had prepared everything so carefully, and yet I had let my kindness be exploited. Floyd turned to the second page, his voice lower now. "And this is something Harold never told you." He pulled out 2 sets of documents stamped with international bank seals and slid them toward me. "Harold opened 2 contingency accounts overseas, one in Canada, one in Switzerland. Both are under your name, and you're the sole legal beneficiary. These accounts were automatically activated after Harold's passing, but require my confirmation to ensure security." I froze. I had lived frugally, surviving on pension and Harold's company shares. I never imagined he had planned this far ahead. "Oh God, Harold," I whispered. "Even after death, you were still looking out for me." Floyd smiled softly and nodded. "That's how he always was. He believed you'd need protection once your son and daughter-in-law grew up." After a moment of silence, I told him everything: the so-called family meeting, the forged document, Evan's avoiding eyes, and Naomi's honeyed voice dripping with lies. I described every tiny detail, from the intentionally misshapen signature to the way she said, "Mom, it's just an insurance form." Floyd listened intently, occasionally jotting notes in his small notebook. When I finished, he looked up, his gaze sharp. "They broke the law, B. If we can prove you were coerced or deceived into signing, that's falsification of legal documents. And if there's intent to seize assets, the penalty is even harsher." I nodded, though my heart was torn. Evan was still my son, after all. I didn't want to send him to prison, even knowing he had betrayed me. Floyd read the look in my eyes. His voice softened. "B, I know you're still a mother and that's what makes you noble, but Harold wouldn't want you to live humiliated. There's a way to expose them without direct confrontation." "I'm listening," I said quietly. Floyd closed his notebook and spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "Pretend to cooperate, pretend to trust them, pretend to be weak. The more they think you're unsuspecting, the more careless they'll become. Meanwhile, I'll collect evidence, video footage, recordings, and financial records. Once everything's solid, we'll take it to court." I was silent for a few seconds, then gave a faint smile. Feign weakness to defeat the strong, Harold used to tell me that. Floyd nodded. So, you agree? My answer was steady. I do. If they think I'm just a senile old woman, I'll let them believe it until they dig their own graves. The meeting lasted over 2 hours. Together, we drafted a plan. I would return to Evan's house, act remorseful, and say, "I've thought it over." I'd let them talk freely while secretly recording with a device Floyd provided. He would contact the banks to secure all assets in my name. Meanwhile, he would file for a property supervision order to prevent unauthorized transfers. Before I left, Floyd placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "B, you're not alone. We'll do this the right way by the law, not by anger." My eyes stung. "Harold, I was lucky to have a friend like you, and I'm lucky you're still here to help me," he chuckled softly. "I'm helping because I don't want Harold showing up in my dreams to yell at me for letting you get cheated." That made me laugh, a sound that was both painful and warm. When I stepped outside, the sunlight filtered through dew-soaked trees. I stood on the steps, lifted my head to the blue sky, and took a deep breath. It felt like I had finally stepped out of the fog. Everything was becoming clear. I knew exactly what I had to do. That evening, I sat at my dining table and wrote a short card to Evan. "I'm sorry for getting upset the other day. I've thought about it, and maybe I was too rigid. If you and Naomi need me to sign the papers again, I will, as long as everyone's happy." I sealed the card in an envelope and mailed it, a small move but the opening act of my counterattack. 3 days later, Evan called. His voice was unusually cheerful. "Mom, Naomi was so touched by your change of heart. We'd love to have you over for dinner this weekend to talk things through." "Are you free?" I feigned confusion. "Well, I think so, but I've been feeling tired lately, and my memory's not what it used to be." "That's okay, Mom. We'll take care of everything." When I hung up, I smiled quietly. They believed me, and that belief would become the blade turning back on them. That evening, I opened the drawer and took out the small box Floyd had given me. Inside was a fountain pen with a built-in micro-recorder. He'd said, "Just press the top of the pen lightly. It'll record everything for up to 3 hours." I pressed it. A small light blinked. I could hear my heartbeat, slow, steady, but strong. Once, I was just a gentle teacher, a kind mother. Now I was learning from those who had hurt me: silence, strategy, and retaliation. I looked in the mirror. My face was old, lined, but in my eyes the tremor was gone. I smiled at my reflection. If they think I'm senile, let them. Because this time, the senile old lady is the one rewriting the ending. I lit a small candle before Harold's photo and whispered, "Do you hear me, Harold? The game has begun. And this time, I won't let anyone touch what's ours." The flame flickered, reflecting in my eyes, bright, deep, metallic. Outside, the wind rustled through the tall pines, like whispered encouragement. I gripped the pen tightly, my weapon, not of violence, but of quiet precision. 2 days before the so-called reconciliation dinner, I woke early and made my usual cup of chamomile tea. Everything was eerily calm, no calls, no messages, no reminders from Evan or Naomi. I thought they were lying low to gauge my reaction, but no. They were busy showing off their victory. That morning, when I opened my laptop for the news, YouTube's homepage showed a suggested video. "Our dream home reveal vertical bar, the Langston estate." Naomi's radiant face filled the thumbnail, red lips, curled blonde hair, with Evan beside her, his arm around her shoulder, and a forced smile. The caption below read, "Thanks to my wonderful in-laws for helping us make this dream come true." I clicked it. Upbeat music blared. Naomi guided viewers past the iron gate, gesturing proudly. Hi everyone, welcome to the new Langston family home, a luxurious, elegant space built with love and a little financial support from my amazing in-laws. Her tone was sweet enough to rot teeth. The camera panned to a shiny brass sign reading Langston Estate, identical to the one once mounted outside my house in North Seattle. I sat upright, heart pounding as I realized the house in the video was mine. The gray roof, the white window frames, the climbing roses along the balcony, every inch unmistakable. She called it the new family home, but to me, it was Harold's legacy, the place where I'd buried my heart in every brick. Naomi led the camera through the interior, gesturing like a tour guide. This is the living room where I'll film my morning cooking vlogs, and here's the kitchen, my favorite space. She opened a cabinet and pulled out a set of crystal glasses. I recognized them instantly, the wedding set engraved B and H 1979, my hands clenched, nails biting into my palms. By the end, Naomi turned to the camera, beaming like a spotlight. Thank you all for your support. This house proves that if you work hard and have people who believe in you, you can achieve anything. Number Langston Estate, number blessed, number family goals. As the hashtag number Langston Estate scrolled across the screen, my chest went cold as if someone had poured ice water over me. I scrolled to the description box. In italics, it read, "House purchased and registered under the name of Naomi Langston, with financial sponsorship from my wonderful mother-in-law, Mrs. Beatrice." My name sat there, surrounded by thousands of likes and glowing comments. I sat frozen. It turned out they had used my name to take out a $400,000 mortgage. I didn't scream or break anything. I simply opened my browser and downloaded that video, then another. House tour, before renovation, Q&A, how we got our dream home. Each one was living evidence. In another clip, Naomi sat on my sofa, flashing a bank statement. A lot of people asked how we got approved for the loan so fast. The secret is having a trustworthy financial guarantor, my mother-in-law. Love you, Mom. She formed a heart with her hands and laughed brightly. Evan sat beside her, silent, eyes cast down like a man hiding guilt. I paused the video, inhaled deeply, then pressed print. White sheets fed from the printer one by one, each labeled with the video title, upload date, views, comments, hashtags, and their smiling, lying faces. When the last page slid out, I stacked them neatly into a folder labeled Evidence, Exploitation of Elder Assets. I picked up the phone and called Floyd. He answered after 2 rings. "B, I need to see you, or at least, you need to see this." I sent the video link via email. Less than a minute later, his voice dropped, tight with anger. "Good Lord, she made this public?" "Not just public, Floyd," I replied. "She used my name to take on debt." He was silent for a few beats, then spoke slowly. "B, this is textbook elder financial abuse, very serious. But don't rush. The more she flaunts it, the more we have to use. Let her keep filming. Let her keep talking." I understood immediately. As I used to tell my students, the one who talks the most in class often reveals the most about themselves. Naomi was talking, and soon every boast would become evidence. That afternoon, I reopened my old social media account. I hadn't posted since Harold died, but I still followed a few groups, including Naomi's. She'd just posted a new story, a sunset view of the glowing house, captioned, "Thank you, Mom Beatrice, for making my dream come true." I tapped the heart icon, then calmly commented, "The new house is beautiful, Naomi. You deserve happiness." Moments later, she sent a private message. "You saw it, Mom? I was worried you'd misunderstand. I just wanted to show appreciation." I typed slowly, "It's fine, dear. I'm just proud of you both." A heart emoji popped up. Naomi believed me. I leaned back in my chair, sipping cold tea, a faint smile curling at my lips. Only one thought crossed my mind. Beautiful. Beautiful. Like a trap closing shut. That night, I organized my files. The first folder, Will and USB, original evidence. The second, videos and social media. I labeled each with timestamps and notes, upload dates, Naomi's hashtags, her subtle mentions of parental support. I even saved all the comments, especially one that stood out. Naomi, I work at the bank. I remember your loan file. You got approved. Be so fast because your mother-in-law's name was on it. An offhand comment, but more powerful than any confession. I printed the page and added it to the file. As I was about to close my laptop, my phone buzzed. A message from Evan. Mom, Naomi posted the house video. Did you see it? Everyone loves it. Thanks again for helping us. I looked at the text, my hand trembling slightly, then replied, It's nothing, son. I just want you both to be happy. I knew if I said anything different, he'd be suspicious. But right now, everything was unfolding perfectly. I set the phone down and opened the old wooden cabinet where Harold used to keep his blueprints. I brushed a thin layer of dust off the surface. Harold, I whispered, they're showing off their prize, but they don't know it's evidence. Moonlight spilled across the table, silver and sharp. I wrote in my journal, the lines even and steady. Naomi posted house video, used my name to borrow $400,000. Hashtag number Langston Estate. Downloaded and printed everything. Sent to Floyd. He said, Don't rush, let her keep filming. I agree. I closed the notebook and set the recording pen beside it. Tomorrow I'd visit them with a smile, compliments, and the air of a proud but forgetful mother. In the silence I felt a strange calm. I used to teach my students that those who know when to stay silent often hold the real power. Now I understood that truth more than ever. I closed my eyes, listening to the rustling wind outside. In it I could almost hear Harold's voice. B, let them build their stage. When the curtain falls, all you have to do is stand up. I smiled, because I knew the play was reaching its climax. And this time, I was the one writing the script. The next morning, Naomi called me with a voice sweeter than usual, the kind that sounded warm but made your skin crawl. Mom, I'll pick you up today so we can go to the bank together. It's just to update your pension records. It won't take long. I knew instantly it wasn't about updating records. Someone who had taught thousands of students how to read between the lines doesn't believe in explanations that sound too smooth. I set my teacup down and looked out the window. Seattle's sunlight was deceptively bright, golden, yet the wind was still cold. I could hear my heartbeat, slow and steady. Part of me wanted to explode, to scream, I'm not as stupid as you think. But the calmer part of me whispered, don't ruin the show while the audience is still entertained. I smiled and replied softly, all right, dear, come pick me up. I'll be ready. Naomi's white SUV stopped at my gate right at 10 a.m. She wore a light beige suit, hair in a high bun, makeup carefully done. Evan sat in the driver's seat, silent, only nodding when I got in. I caught a faint whiff of expensive perfume, the smell of smugness. Mom, Naomi said as the car turned onto the main road, we just want to help you manage your retirement account more easily. You've been forgetting a lot lately, and we're afraid you'll get scammed. I gave a small smile, my voice trembling as if to prove my old age. I do forget things. Good thing I have you two. Naomi glanced at me, eyes equal parts pity and triumph. She bought it. The bank was in a glass high-rise downtown. I'd been there years ago with Harold when he opened a savings account for the company. This time everything looked brighter, but my heart was heavier than ever. A young teller smiled as soon as Naomi walked in. Mrs. Langston. Back again today? Naomi answered warmly. Yes, I'm bringing my mother-in-law to update her pension records. I noticed the teller's quick look in my direction, a mix of sympathy and curiosity. Like a sweet little grandma being cared for by her daughter-in-law. Naomi pulled out a chair for me and carefully set a file. About half an inch thick on the desk, pale blue cover, a label on the corner, retirement account update form. "Sign here, Mom," she said, pointing at the bottom right of the first page. "It's just administrative. This lets the bank link your pension to our joint account, so it's easier to track." I put on my glasses and pretended to fumble through the pages. While Naomi smiled, I silently scanned the tiny 9-point print. And then I saw it. On page 3, the header read, "Authorization of full financial transfer and property sale, Beatrice Langston to Naomi Langston." Below it, in even smaller print, "The asset owner authorizes full rights to withdraw, transfer, sell, or mortgage personal assets to the authorized party." I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. "Sweetie, there's a lot of text here. I'm afraid I'll sign something wrong." Naomi smiled, soothing. "It's fine, Mom, just legal phrasing." "Go ahead and sign, I'll handle the rest." The words "go ahead and sign" still haunt me because it wasn't just a lie. It was a knife hidden behind a smile. Have you ever witnessed or lived through a betrayal wrapped that neatly? Share your story or thoughts in the comments. Maybe your words will help someone out there recognize something important. My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. The fountain pen with Floyd's recorder fit snugly in my palm, a tiny green light blinking. I let out a weak smile and signed with a downward wobble, turning the B into a D, and I intentionally misspelled our last name, Langstone, instead of Langston. I stopped halfway and sighed. "Oh, my hand is shaking. Must be the weather." Naomi quickly took my hand, voice dripping with faux concern. "It's okay, Mom. Older hands shake." "Totally normal." She pushed the paper closer. "The signature still counts, don't worry." Evan stared at the page. Doubt flashed in his eyes. "Wait, Naomi, the signature, it doesn't look right." Naomi turned, smiling like a blade. "Evan, don't be paranoid. Mom's older, shaky hands look different. Nobody signs exactly the same as before." Evan went quiet, but I saw the confusion in his eyes. I just smiled gently. "Yes, Mom's old. Good thing I have you two, otherwise I'd be lost in all this paperwork." When we finished, Naomi gathered the files, thanked the teller, and led me out like the perfect daughter-in-law. "All done, Mom. Now you just relax." I smiled the kind of smile only I knew was the smile of someone who'd just captured the first confession. In my coat pocket, the tiny pen kept blinking, recording every word, every fake laugh, every older hand's shake. On the ride home, Naomi put on soft music. Evan drove, face closed off, saying nothing. I watched the buildings slide by. Everything seemed normal, but in my head, pieces were clicking into place, steps, evidence, and a future courtroom where I'd stand tall, no longer the senile old woman. Back home, Naomi kissed my cheek and reminded me, "Rest up, Mom. I'll come back this afternoon to make dinner." I nodded. "Thank you, Naomi. You're very thoughtful." The door closed. The engine faded away. The house fell silent. I took the pen from my pocket and held the button for 3 seconds. The light went dark. I sat at the dining table, opened the pen, and plugged it into my laptop. The audio played, each word clear. "Go ahead and sign. It's just administrative." "It's fine," older hands shake. "Don't be paranoid. The signature is valid." I listened 3 times, then saved the file in a folder called Bank Recordings. I named it Proof 1, Financial Coercion, MP3. Then I opened my notebook and wrote, carefully, date, Tuesday, April 19th. Location, First Federal Bank, 3rd floor, desk 14. Witness, female teller with brown hair, name tag L. Kimball. Event, Naomi Langston directed me to sign a BRANG, retirement update that was actually full authorization to withdraw funds and sell assets. Evidence, full audio recording of the conversation. I set the pen down and leaned back, tired but lighter. For years I'd believed love alone would keep children from doing wrong. Now I understood sometimes silence and documentation are love with discipline. That afternoon when Naomi returned, I pretended to watch TV, smiling. "Look at the video I posted the other day. Mom, our family looks so happy." She laughed, the heavy scent of perfume following her. Evan came in behind her, holding the signed file, eyes still uneasy. "Mom, I'm putting the paperwork in the safe for now. I'll take it back to the bank tomorrow." "Whatever you think," I said evenly. "I don't really understand these things." Naomi studied me, then relaxed. "I just want you to feel secure." I nodded with a gentle smile. But inside, every step was set. Floyd would get a copy of the recording in the morning. And after that, Naomi wouldn't just be a greedy daughter-in-law, she'd be under investigation for elder financial coercion. Late that night, after they left, I opened my notebook and added one more line. Today's performance was flawless. The lead actress has no idea she's being filmed. I set the notebook down and looked up at the ceiling. Harold used to say, "You're a soft woman but never weak." Now I understood him completely. I stood, cleared the table, and made another cup of chamomile tea. The kitchen light reflected my face in the window, a 68-year-old woman with silver hair and eyes brighter than ever. I looked at myself and whispered, "If this is a play, then I'm the director." Saturday night, a text from Naomi. "Mom, we'd love to have you over for dinner and clear up the misunderstandings. I'm making your favorite pan-seared salmon and red wine," a heart and a smiley face underneath. I looked at the message and smirked. Behind every sweet invitation from Naomi was a trap already set. But tonight, I wouldn't sidestep it. I put on the blue dress Harold chose for our 30th anniversary. The collar still had the tiny stitch he sewed after I tore it once. I wore my old pearls, tied my hair back, and looked in the mirror. Not to look pretty, but to be calm. I was ready for the next round. Evan and Naomi's house glowed warm under golden lights. The door opened and Naomi greeted me, her smile as soft as wine and as cold as a blade. "You're here. You look wonderful." "I was afraid you wouldn't come," I answered lightly. "Why wouldn't I? You invited me. I wouldn't want to ruin a reconciliation dinner." Evan stepped out of the living room in an open vest and white shirt. "Mom, I'm sorry about all the misunderstandings lately. Naomi just wants to help, but she can be a little intense." Naomi jumped in. "Yes. We just want what's best for you. Sometimes we rush things, but it's all because we worry." I smiled, steady. "Good. Then tonight, let's celebrate. A reunited family." They traded a look, believing I'd softened. The table was set with care. Cream linens, scented candles, crystal glasses. The smell of salmon mixed with a hint of Bordeaux. Naomi sat across from me, pouring wine, her hands slightly shaky though her eyes calculated everything. "Have a sip, Mom," she said sweetly. I lifted the glass to my lips but didn't drink. "It's good wine, but I want to stay clear enough to remember everything I hear tonight." Evan gave a tight laugh, trying to ease the tension. "Still sharp as ever, Mom." I tilted my head. I'm old, yes, but not so far gone that I'd sign wrong a second time. The air stalled. Naomi tittered, forced. "Oh, Mom, what a thing to say. Come on, eat before it gets cold." I cut a small bite and chewed slowly. In the candlelight, I watched every move. Naomi kept pouring, but barely touched her glass. Evan talked more than usual gentle words, repeating family, misunderstanding, for the future. I let them perform until Naomi shifted tone. "Mom, I just hope you understand we're doing all this for your grandchild. We want to make sure she has the best future. You love her, don't you?" I set my knife down and looked up. My voice was low but clear. "I do love her, and because of her future, I won't let you two strip me of everything." Evan froze. Naomi kept smiling, though her lips trembled. "Why would you say that? Who's trying to take from you?" I met her eyes. "Really? The house tag number Langston Estate, that thank you to my mother-in-law for sponsoring us video, the withdrawal authorization from the other morning, did I voluntarily sign that?" Naomi's eyes widened, then dropped. Evan slammed his glass onto the table. "Mom," he snapped, voice higher than usual, "who's putting ideas in your head? We're helping you." I stayed seated, calm. Helping me? By gradually moving assets into Naomi's name? The room thickened with silence. The only sound was the clock ticking. Naomi forced a smile and set a hand on her husband's. "Honey, Mom's just misunderstanding. Mom, please let's sit and find the most reasonable plan for the baby." I cut her off, looking straight at her. "I am thinking about the baby, but about her future, not your wallets." A long beat, then slam! Evan smacked the table. The red wine quivered, a few drops splattering the white cloth. "You've gone too far, Mom. We're your family." I stood slowly, my voice steady. "Careful, son. There's a camera here." He went rigid. I pointed to the corner where Naomi kept a live stream camera for her family dinner videos. The tiny light was still blinking. "If you want to yell, at least remember people might be recording every move." Naomi jumped up, smiling thinly. My goodness, you're so sensitive, Mom. The camera's just for vlogs." "Evan, sit down. Please, I'm begging you." Evan exhaled sharply, threw his napkin onto the table, and stormed into the living room. Naomi hurried after him, her voice syrupy sweet. "Honey, please. Mom didn't mean anything. She's just tired." I stayed at the table, took a sip of the half-finished wine. Bitter, but clean. It tasted like my first victory. A few minutes later, Naomi returned, the smile on her lips twisted. "Mom, let me drive you home. It's late. I don't want you driving alone." I stood, picked up my purse. "No need. I can manage. And don't worry, my memory's sharper than you think." Naomi grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. "Please don't be mad, we were just—" "Mad?" I looked at her, smiling faintly. "No. I'm just waiting for the day you two get mad at yourselves." She let go. I walked out. The Seattle night wind bit cold, but I felt strangely warm inside. When I got home, I turned on the light and opened my evidence journal. The newest page read, "Reconciliation dinner, Saturday, April 23rd. I wrote, "Naomi invited me to dinner, poured wine, staged a warm reunion." Evan acted remorseful, but his real goal was psychological manipulation. They used "for the baby's future" as an excuse for financial exploitation. Evan lost his temper, slammed the table, camera recorded everything. Then, in slanted handwriting, I added one more line. "When they test you with fire, let the fire prove your gold." I picked up my phone and texted Floyd, "Got new footage." "They lost control tonight. The house camera autosaved to the cloud. I'll pull the link tomorrow," he replied a few minutes later. "Good. Don't delete anything. We'll file a data preservation order." I set the phone down and leaned back. Harold once told me, "Not everyone who argues loudly is strong. Sometimes, the one who stays silent at the right time truly wins." Tonight, I finally understood. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. I stood by the window, watching the moonlight reflect off the glass. My reflection stared back older, thinner, but calm, eyes steady and bright. I whispered softly, as if to Harold, "I've walked through the fire, and instead of burning me, it forged me into gold." I turned off the light and closed the window. In the dark, I heard my own heartbeat, not from fear, but from certainty. The Langston family's power game had only just begun. After that dramatic reconciliation dinner, I realized I needed air, real air. A world without lies, without smiles sharp enough to cut. I needed space from that house full of memories, at least a few hours a day, to think clearly again. On Monday morning, I drove to Green Hill Community Center, the same place where I used to teach children how to paint when Harold was alive. The old banner still hung at the gate, "Learn for life, live in freedom." I parked, walked inside. The air smelled of cheap coffee, paint thinner, and laughter. I signed up for the senior art class because I needed a quiet place that still had color. The classroom was small, walls painted pale yellow, sunlight spilling through the windows onto half-finished canvases. I picked a seat near the window, opened my palette, mixed blue with a touch of white. My hands still trembled, but each brushstroke steadied my pulse. By the third session, I met Lydia, a tall woman around 70. Silver hair, eyes blazing with life. She sat beside me, painting massive sunflowers that twisted toward the light in defiance. We started talking after I accidentally knocked over my rinse cup. Lydia chuckled. "Oh, don't worry. I once spilled an entire jar of paint on someone's shoes." Her voice was low, raspy, like someone who'd weathered storms. During the break, I mentioned half by accident that my son wanted to manage my finances for me. Lydia gave a short, bitter laugh, eyes flickering with old pain. "Oh, that sounds familiar. I heard the same thing right before I lost my house." I fell silent. She continued, slow and steady, not a tear shed. "My son said he just wanted to make things easier for me. I signed one paper, just one, like you did. A month later, I got a notice giving me 3 weeks to vacate. He'd sold the house and moved his family out of state." My throat tightened. "What did you do?" Lydia lifted her head, her smile thin but sharp. "I cried for 3 months. Then I stopped. I realized if I wanted to survive, I had to be smarter than them, smarter with my mind and with the law." Her words hit me like a hammer, quiet but echoing long after. Smarter than them. Not through revenge, but through knowledge. The next day, I arrived earlier than usual. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed a poster on the bulletin board. "Free workshop, senior property rights. Know the law to protect yourself." Speaker, Professor Harold B. Keller, Seattle Law School. I stared for a long moment, then I signed my name. The session was held in a small conference room with about 20 people, mostly women over 60. The instructor, Professor Keller, spoke slowly, clearly. He began with a line I'll never forget. "When someone says they're helping you sign faster, remember no one has the legal right to pressure you into signing anything." I opened my notebook, writing down every word. He went on, "Power of attorney forms are only valid if the signer is fully aware and acts voluntarily. If there's evidence of coercion, fraud, or manipulation, that document is void immediately." My pen paused. The words glowed on the page like light in the dark. Void if coercion is proven. He continued, "If you suspect exploitation, you can petition the court to temporarily freeze assets while the case is investigated. And remember, any conversation, message, or recording related to the issue counts as admissible evidence." I looked up. For a second, I could almost see Harold, nodding somewhere near. He'd always believed in the law, in justice, and now the law itself was my ally. Lydia nudged my elbow. "See? They can't take what's yours if you know your rights. You're doing the right thing." I smiled softly. "I don't want to win through anger. I want to win through truth." After class, I stopped by Floyd's office and handed him a copy of my notes. He read them, nodding. "Excellent, B. Everything you learned today is another brick in your wall of defense. We'll use the law itself to fight back." I went home feeling lighter, yet sharper. The living room was quiet except for the ticking clock. I opened my laptop, set up the small microphone, and began recording an audio journal just as Floyd had advised. My voice filled the still air, steady and deliberate. April 27th. I, Beatrice Langston, record this for the record. Today I learned that any coerced signature is legally void. I believe my daughter-in-law, Naomi Langston, and my son Evan Langston have taken advantage of my trust. I am collecting evidence." I paused, then spoke slower. "I don't want revenge. I want them to understand that justice can't be bought. And one day, when they stand in court, I won't scream or cry. I'll simply press play." I saved the file and titled it Voice Note 1. The Beginning. When I replayed it, my voice sounded deeper, stronger. For the first time in months, I heard myself and didn't tremble. That night, I pulled out a small notebook labeled Strategy, the one Harold used for his business plans. I added a new page. Protection Plan. Beatrice Langston 1. Record daily voice journals. 2. Document every time Naomi or Evan contacts me about money. 3. Enroll in fraud prevention for seniors. 4. Gather proof of Naomi's mortgage under my round name. 5. Draft a letter to the court for worst-case scenarios. I closed the notebook, feeling like I'd just put on armor made of knowledge. Over the weekend, during art class, Lydia leaned toward me and whispered, "You're painting better now. The yellow looks stronger today." I smiled. "I learned not to fear the dark, just to add more light." Lydia nodded, her tone soft as a breeze. "You're finding yourself again, Bea. And when a woman knows her rights, no one can ever lead her blindfolded again." I looked at my canvas sunflowers bathed in sunlight, each brushstroke trembling yet firm. In that golden glow, I saw myself again, a woman once betrayed, now reborn from ashes. I knew the storm wasn't over, but this time I had weapons, not anger, but knowledge. Not hate, but truth. And above all, I had Harold, I had Floyd, I had Lydia, and I had me. 3 weeks later, on an ordinary Friday morning, Lydia entered class looking anything but ordinary. She held an iPad tightly, her face pale. She walked straight to me and said in a low, worried tone, "Bea, you need to see this." Before I could ask, she opened YouTube. Naomi's face filled the screen, polished, perfectly made up, voice sugar-sweet but venomous beneath. Video title, "Care for My Senile Mother-in-Law. Taking care of aging family isn't easy." I froze. On screen, I saw myself dozing on the couch, head tilted, mouth slightly open, blanket slipped to the floor. Behind me, Naomi whispered to the camera, "She used to be a teacher. Now she forgets to turn off the stove. But I still care for her like my own mother, because my husband, he loves her so much." I could hear Evan's faint chuckle in the background. Then the footage cut Naomi helping me take my medicine, holding a glass of water while I looked dazed. But I remembered that day clearly. I'd had a mild headache, and Floyd had suggested a light sedative so I could rest. Naomi had filmed me right after I took it. The entire 6-minute video was neatly edited, with captions floating over somber music. Caring for the elderly is a journey full of challenges. Not everyone understands a daughter-in-law's struggles. I scrolled down to the comments, each one stabbed like a knife. "Poor daughter-in-law, she's a saint to put up with that old woman. She looks totally senile. Probably abusive, too. Crazy grandma vibes." I couldn't believe my eyes. All my life I'd been a teacher, respected, kind, never spoken to harshly, and now, online, I was the crazy old woman. Lydia put a hand on my shoulder, voice shaking with anger. "They're building their image by humiliating you." I looked at the screen, my face distorted by bad lighting, eyes half closed, made to look unhinged. I forced a smile. "It's all right, Lydia. I'm used to it." But that night, I sat alone in the living room, watching the video again. The bluish glow of the screen washed over my face, old, yes, but not stupid. Every word Naomi spoke cut deeper. I had thought I was strong enough not to be hurt by betrayal. But seeing tens of thousands of strangers laugh at me, I cried. My sobs blended with the ticking clock in the dark room. Harold once said, "Dignity is the only thing no one can take unless you stay silent and let them." I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. I replayed the video, paused on each frame, screenshot every line, every comment. I printed them one by one, slid each into plastic sleeves, and organized them neatly in a thick binder. On the first page, I wrote the heading, Evidence Number 2, Defamation and Elder Abuse. Below it, I added in careful handwriting, Uploader, Naomi Langston. Timestamp, 8:42 a.m., May 18th. Content, the video distorted my image and twisted my words into lies. Consequence, thousands of views, hundreds of public comments full of humiliation. I paused for a moment, staring at the printed screenshots. In every frame, I no longer saw myself the woman who once stood strong, who once taught in classrooms, who once loved her family deeply. All I saw was a character, reshaped by them to earn sympathy from strangers. I placed my hand over the stack of papers, feeling the chill run through me. If this is the game they want, I whispered, then I'll be the one to end it. The next morning, I brought all the documents to Floyd. He listened quietly, his face tightening. This is defamation, B. If we can prove they did it for money or to damage your reputation, you have every right to sue. Then his gaze softened. But I know you. You're not trying to drag them to court just for revenge. You want them to expose themselves, don't you? I nodded. Yes. I want them to bury themselves with the very thing they love most, social media. Floyd leaned back in his chair, a faint, knowing smile crossing his lips. Then let them keep live streaming. The more they post, the better. When you're ready, you'll only need to appear once, and one sentence will be enough. I understood what he meant. The game wasn't over yet. That afternoon, Lydia stopped by with a box of warm apple pie. Don't sit here stewing, B. People like Naomi only win if you let them make you ashamed. I smiled, slicing the pie as the scent of cinnamon filled the room. You know, I once told my students that every mistake leaves a trace. Naomi forgot that a camera doesn't just record one side. Lydia raised a brow, curious. What are you planning to do? I just smiled, offering no answer. The plan was already forming. I picked up my phone and checked my notifications. Naomi had just posted a new video, live stream, a day caring for my mother-in-law with memory loss. Hundreds of people were tuning in. I read the first comment, my heart going cold. Poor girl, her meal looks gone already. I took a slow breath and tapped follow. The glow from the screen reflected in my eyes. Keep filming, Naomi, I murmured. Next time, the mic will be mine. That night, I sat in Harold's study. On the desk, the silver USB he'd left inside the blue envelope still rested where it had always been, gleaming faintly under the desk lamp. I had never opened it, but maybe the time had come. I brushed my fingertips over it, whispering as if to him, You once told me, when you need the truth, it will speak for itself. I think. That time is near. Then, I opened my phone and began recording my 13th voice journal. May 19th. Naomi posted a video defaming me. They're calling me crazy grandma. I'm not angry, just sad, for the son who chose silence. But next time they go live, I'll be the one holding the mic. I stopped the recording and played it back. My voice no longer shook. No sobs, no fear, only the calm of a woman who's lost everything, yet rises to reclaim her dignity. I closed my notebook and turned off the lamp, leaving only the faint light from my phone screen. Outside, rain began to fall, heavy, rhythmic, like the sound of knuckles tapping before a storm. I closed my eyes, and one thought echoed in my mind. If they want an audience, I'll give them a show, but it will be the final act. 3 days after the crazy grandma video went viral, Evan showed up at my door one morning, holding a beige envelope. I was watering the flowers on the porch when he approached, wearing that strained smile I knew too well. Mom, he said softly, I brought your new insurance papers. The company updated their policy. You just need to sign again. I studied him. The sunlight hit his face, revealing fatigue, but behind that nervous look, I could see impatience and calculation. "Insurance papers?" I asked, keeping my voice mild. "Yes," he said quickly. "The old policy expired. If you don't sign, you'll lose your health coverage." I gave a faint smile. They always knew how to pick the one fear that worked best on the elderly losing security. I invited Evan inside. He sat at the dining table and pulled out 3 neatly printed pages. The text was tiny. I put on my glasses and pretended to read carefully, though my eyes went straight to the bottom. No date, no witness. No company representative signature, just one blank line for mine. I looked up. "You said this is from the insurance company, but why isn't there an effective date?" Evan hesitated, then forced a smile. "Oh, probably just a draft version. You can sign now, we'll fill it in later." I rested my chin on my hand, pretending to think. "And what if I don't sign?" His smile tightened, patience slipping. "Mom, you know how complicated insurance systems are. If you don't sign, you could lose medical access this month." "I'm just trying to help you." I met his eyes. "Help me or help your wife's bank account?" He looked away, fingers gripping the papers hard enough to crease them. "Don't misunderstand. Naomi just wants things to go smoothly. You don't want hospital issues, right?" I smiled again. "Right. I hate complications, but I hate being manipulated even more." He didn't catch the sting in my tone. I stood up, pretending to fetch a pen, then sat down slowly. My hand trembled not from fear, but to convince him I was frail, just like Naomi's forgetful old lady version of me online. I signed deliberately, slow and shaky, but before the ink dried, I switched pens. It was Harold's special fountain pen, the kind that left an invisible watermark visible only under light. Right beneath the signature Beatrice Langston, I wrote one word in faint script: void. Barely visible, but Floyd would see it instantly. When I handed the paper back, Evan exhaled with relief. "Perfect, Mom. I'll drop this off at the agency." I nodded softly. "Be careful, son. A document without a date tends to get lost easily." He smiled, standing up. "Don't worry, Naomi will take care of everything." I walked him to the door, still smiling gently. But when the door closed, that smile fell like an old mask finally removed. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the document before he could file it. The photo clearly showed my signature and the hidden word void glowing under the desk lamp. I sent it to Floyd with a quick message. They came again. No date, no witness. I left the word void. "Please check." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Floyd's voice came through, low but satisfied. "Excellent, B. You just saved yourself again. That paper alone can prove elder coercion. If necessary, it's enough to press charges." I exhaled, relief tinged with bitterness. "They think I'm clueless, Floyd. Like a blank sheet of paper." "Even better," he said. "Let them think that. When people believe you're weak, they expose their own cracks." That evening, Naomi called, her voice sugary and fake. "Mom, Evan said you signed. Thank you, your coverage is even better now. I'll come visit you this weekend." I smiled into the phone. "Thank you, Naomi. I'm so glad you two care so much about me." "Of course, Mom. We always do." When the call ended, I opened my phone's recorder. Ever since that workshop, I'd set my phone to automatically record every incoming call. I replayed Naomi's voicelight, hurried, hiding something beneath. I saved the file as call, FIV-22, fake insurance. Then I opened my personal voice journal and began speaking, steady and calm. May 22nd, Evan brought a so-called health insurance form. No date, no witness. They said if I didn't sign, I'd lose coverage. I signed but wrote void beneath. This is my third piece of evidence. Naomi later called to confirm her tone was eager. I believe they're planning something bigger. I'll be right here, watching. I stopped recording and replayed it. Each entry was another brick. Quiet, solid, unbreakable. Night deepened. I sat in Harold's study beside the orchid he used to tend. The desk lamp glowed over the growing stacks of files. I opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo. Harold smiling, coffee cup in hand, me behind him holding student papers. I whispered, "See, Harold? They think I'm weak, but I'm only waiting for the right moment." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of wet soil. I closed the window and added one last note to my journal. Evan looked nervous when I asked about the effective date. "Naomi seems fully convinced I suspect nothing." Floyd confirmed, "Grounds for a case if they use this document." I paused, staring at the faint void glowing under the light. One word, but it carried the weight of awareness and self-respect. I closed the notebook and turned off the lamp. In the darkness, I could hear my own breathing, slow, deep, steady. I was no longer the woman crying in that room months ago. I was someone rewriting the rules, one law at a time, reclaiming justice for myself. I smiled faintly and murmured, "They began this with a blank, dateless page. But I'll end it with a stamped verdict." That night I barely slept. The wind whispered through the old window frame, mingling with the ticking clock sounds that carried me back to quieter years with Harold. Whenever I lost my way, I heard his voice again, deep, slow, steady as a heartbeat. "B, if you ever doubt something, open our music box." I'd never forgotten those words. But for years I had left that walnut music box untouched on the shelf, dusted by time. I stood, walking toward the cabinet. The desk lamp cast my shadow long across the wall. The box was small, no bigger than two hands pressed together, engraved with the words, "H and B, our forever waltz." Whenever it opened, it played "The Blue Danube," the waltz Harold had put on the night we got engaged, when we danced around the living room, believing the world was ours alone. I rested my palm on the lid. My heart beat softly, as if touching something both sacred and familiar. "Harold," I whispered, "you told me to open it when I start doubting." "Well, I'm doubting everything now." I turned the tiny key. The spring clicked. The melody began gentle, tender, piercingly beautiful. I waited until it nearly faded, then carefully lifted the velvet lining underneath. There, hidden in a narrow compartment, was a silver USB, the very one Harold had left with the blue envelope years ago. I picked it up. The metal felt cold, but my hand burned warm around it. On the side, a faint engraving glimmered under the light, "For truth, if love fails." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. Harold always had a way of saying things that hurt and comforted at once. I plugged the USB into my laptop. The screen lit up, revealing a single folder, E.L. Confidential. I opened it. Inside were 3 video files, all dated nearly 5 years ago, back when Harold was still CEO of Langston Investments. I clicked on the first one. The footage opened from a security camera. The lighting was dim, but clear enough to show a man in a dark suit bent over Harold's computer. I froze. That face, it was Evan. I couldn't believe it. My son, the boy who once rode on my shoulders, who used to call me Supermom, was stealing confidential company data from his own father's computer. Harold walked into the room. I heard his voice calm but sad. "What are you doing, Evan?" Evan startled and turned around. "I'm just taking a few files to look over at home, Dad." "Nothing serious." Harold stared straight at him, his voice heavier. "Those files are clients' investment records. You have no right to take them out of the office." "You always think I'm incompetent," Evan snapped. "I just want to prove I can do what you do, maybe better." Harold was silent for a few seconds. Then he said something that nearly made me cry on the spot. "You might surpass me, Evan, but not by getting your hands dirty." Evan went quiet, then walked out. The video ended there, but it was enough to make my heart shake with pain. I opened the second file. This time it was footage from an internal account, Harold sitting with another attorney, discussing suspicious withdrawals from an investment fund. I heard Evan's name clearly. He moved $150,000 through a shell company in Florida. I've frozen the account, but we need more evidence. The third file was short, under a minute. Harold sat facing the lens, tired but resolute. He spoke slowly, like he knew I'd watch this one day. B, if you're seeing this, it means Evan has gone too far. I hope you won't blame me for keeping this from you. But I have to protect you, and everything we've built. This USB holds all the evidence I've gathered. If they try to take what's yours, use it. And B, I'm sorry. I couldn't fix the son we both love. I pressed my hand to my mouth, choking up. Everything inside me felt like it was melting. I cried and smiled at the same time, my voice trembling. You always know how to protect me, Harold, even when you're not here. Tears fell onto the keyboard, but I didn't feel weak. It was a wave, fierce but clear. I saved the files, copied them to a separate drive, and hid them well. Part of me still hurt Harold had carried this secret alone until the end. But the rest of me felt stronger than ever. I picked up my phone, opened the voice recorder, and spoke slowly. May 25th. I opened Harold's music box. Inside was the USB. Contents: proof Evan once stole company data and laundered money. Harold saw all of this coming. I won't use it to humiliate my son, but I will use it to stop him from committing more crimes. I paused, then added, if justice had a shape, today it fits in the palm of my hand. That evening, I made tea and sat by the window. Outside, wind moved through the trees, and the smell of night rain drifted in. I set the music box back on the shelf and opened the lid. The Blue Danube played again, gentle and proud. I spoke softly, as if sending it to Harold somewhere far away. Do you see, Harold? I'm doing exactly what you hoped. I'm not getting revenge. I'm helping Evan understand that guilt never disappears. It only waits for the right time to come back. I closed my eyes and let the music carry me into thought. Tomorrow, I would see Floyd. Not to hand over the USB, but to draw one last line for Evan. Either he stops, or I'll make sure the whole world knows who he is. And for the first time in years, I felt Harold beside me, in every small note that rang through the quiet room. No more fear, only a woman who knows what she has to do. 2 days after opening the USB, Naomi called out of the blue. Her voice was bright and cheerful, so much so that if I didn't know her real face, I might have believed her. Mom! We're filming a new vlog for my channel. Theme is Family Dinner with Grandma. I want you to be in it. Just a fun little evening, okay? I paused, watering the orchids, watching droplets sparkle on the tile in the sunlight. Family dinner? I repeated, stressing it just a bit. Yes, Mom. Simple. Family gathered, chatting, dinner. I want people to see you're healthy and happy. To show everyone the Langston family is close. The Langston family, she said it like a brand, not a home. I was quiet for a few seconds, then smiled. All right, Naomi. If it's a family dinner, I'll be there. I heard a small sigh of relief on the other end. Great, Mom. I'll have a pro crew come by. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. When she hung up, I checked the time. The performance was about to begin. The next evening, I arrived at Evans on the dot. The house glowed. The table was dressed to the nines, white cloth, red roses in the center, scented candles on both sides. A small crew set up lights and checked the angles. Naomi stood in the middle in a cream silk dress, her face flawless like it had been polished by an invisible filter. Mom, you're here. You look wonderful. She slipped an arm around my shoulders like we were the dearest pair. The expensive perfume in the air was sweet and suffocating. Evan was there too, neatly dressed, smiling the exact smile of a dutiful son. Mom, this is just for fun. Don't be nervous. I smiled gently. I'm not. It's interesting, my daughter-in-law is a director now. Naomi laughed, but a cold flicker passed through her eyes. Filming started. Lights bright, lenses sweeping across our faces. Naomi's voice went high and honey-sweet. "Hi, everyone. Tonight our Langston family is having a special dinner with our lovely mother-in-law, Bea." She turned to me, her smile dazzling as stage lights. "Mom, say a few words to the audience." I looked into the camera, smiling kindly, and spoke slowly. "I just hope my children are happy, live with integrity, and remember that love should never be turned into a tool." Naomi clapped and nodded, but her eyes were wary. All night I ate lightly, spoke just enough, and played the sweet mom role she wanted. When the director said, "Cut," the crew packed up. Naomi walked them out, and I stayed, quietly folding my napkin. A moment later she came back and gently closed the door. No more cameras, no more audience, just her and me. Her voice changed, completely cold enough that I could see the line between nice daughter-in-law and predator. "Mom, if you sign the transfer, tonight's video will be my gift to you." A beautiful, warm image for people to remember. I lifted my eyes, calm. "And if every 7 is off, don't sign?" Naomi stepped closer, bracing her hands on the table, her words like knives. "Then you'll lose everything. The house, the money, your reputation. You have no idea, you old woman, just a few more videos, and this whole city will think you're truly gone." I said nothing, just watched her. She looked stunning, stunning in a dangerous way, sharp, cold, arrogant. I smiled lightly, a wave moving under the surface. "No, Naomi. You'll be the one who loses." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I stood slowly, folded the napkin, and set it on the table. "You know, some people never learn that every show needs an audience. But if the audience switches sides, the stage collapses." Naomi gave a thin laugh, pretending not to care, but doubt flashed in her eyes. "You're being dramatic." "I'm only trying to help you." I didn't answer. I simply smiled and picked up my purse. "Thank you for dinner. And thank you for inviting me to the video. I'm sure it'll get a lot of views." She scowled. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You'll see," I said, and walked out. On the drive home, night air slipped through the crack in the window, carrying the smell of damp leaves and mist. My hand brushed the tiny recorder sewn into my purse lining. From the first minute of filming to Naomi's, "If you don't sign, you'll lose everything," it had captured everything clear as day. I put on my headphones to check. Naomi's voice filled the quiet car, flat and cold. "You'll lose everything." Then mine, soft but firm. "No, you will." I stopped the file and saved it to a folder labeled Proof 4. Fake vlog. My heartbeat was steady. No longer the tremor of a victim, this was the rhythm of someone in control. The next morning, I met Floyd at his office. He listened to the recording, paused a few seconds, then let out a small, impressed laugh. "I can't believe how calm you were." I sipped my tea. "If I get angry, they think I'm weak. I choose silence. Silence scares them more." Floyd nodded. "Good. This is textbook coercion." "You didn't just protect yourself. B, you let them paint their own villain portrait." He looked at me, gentle but firm. "How do you want to use it?" I smiled. "Not yet. I'll let Naomi post her video. When the time's right, I'll repost it with the behind-the-scenes she didn't know existed." That afternoon, I went home, opened Harold's USB, and looked at his face in the last clip. "If they try to take what's yours, use it." I spoke to him through the screen. "They're knocking on the door, love. All I have to do is press play." Then I opened my laptop, launched the audio editor, and dropped Naomi's threat into the tail end of family dinner with Grandma. Her bright smile at the dinner table cut hard into her own cold voice. "If you don't sign, you'll lose everything." I hit save. New file name, Final Dinner, Edit, MP4. I leaned back as the last light of the day warmed the desk. What I felt wasn't glee, it was peace. Harold had protected me with the USB. Now it was my turn to protect myself with the truth. That night, I sat in front of the mirror, looking at my reflection, older, tired, but with eyes that were bright, deep, and clear. I whispered, like a vow, "This time I'll be the one who turns on the mic last." On Monday morning, I arrived at Floyd's office earlier than usual. The rain had just stopped, and soft silver light filtered through the big window, giving the room a smoky sheen. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with old wood and paper, the scent of legal battles fought here before. Floyd was waiting. When I walked in, he stood and smiled lightly. "I take it you didn't sleep." I set my bag on the desk and laid everything out. Harold's silver USB, the backup drive with the edited video, and 2 thick folders, recordings, screenshots, document copies, all the evidence Naomi and Evan had handed us themselves. "I brought everything," I said evenly. "Every single thing they did, every word." Floyd plugged in the USB. A tiny green light blinked. He reviewed, flipped through, listened to Naomi threaten me, then looked up, his expression turning grave. "B, this is a legal goldmine. We have enough to charge elder abuse, coercion, and financial fraud. If you want, both of them could be facing prison." I was quiet for a few beats. The words "facing prison" made me shiver, not from fear, but from sadness. Evan is still my son. Then I remembered Harold. Remembered his words on the video. "If they take what's yours, use the truth." I lifted my head and spoke slowly. "We'll do it, Floyd. But not just for payback. I want justice to come, clean. I want the world to see the truth straight from their own mouths." Floyd nodded, his eyes full of respect. "So, we're on the same page. I have a plan." He spread a blank sheet of paper across the desk and drew a small diagram, numbering each step. "Step 1. I'll file a temporary civil claim, not public yet, just enough to freeze your current assets so they can't sell or transfer anything. Step 2. We'll prepare for the official reading of Harold's original will at the courthouse. Invite legal representatives, the media, and Evan's attorney. Everything must be recorded. Step 3. You'll appear as if you still trust your son and read the transfer document they forced you to sign. During that moment, they'll expose themselves." I looked at him and smiled. "You want me to pretend to be weak again?" "No," Floyd replied, his voice low but steady. "Not weak trusting. You'll make them believe they've won, right before they destroy themselves." I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. "Fair enough. They've always thought I was foolish. Now I'll just let them prove it." I took the photocopy of the so-called transfer document Evan had brought me and laid it on the table. The black print, no dates, no witnesses, still sent chills through me every time I looked at it. "I want to read this one last time in front of them." Floyd frowned. "You mean in public?" "Yes. I want them to hear it, to believe I'm handing everything over. And when they sign their confirmation, the recordings, the video, and Harold's USB will speak for themselves. At that point, they'll confess on their own." Floyd was silent for a few seconds, then smiled the smile of a man who'd seen arrogance collapse many times before. "You'll make them confess with their own mouths." "Perfect." He stood, poured another cup of coffee, and said, "I'll handle all the recording equipment. Also, I'd like to bring in a second attorney, a specialist in elder law. Her name's Marla Henderson. I think you'll like her." "What will she do?" I asked. "She'll observe, take notes, and serve as a witness if this goes to court. Neutral, so no one will suspect a thing." I nodded. Everything was moving into place, smooth, precise, like one of the chess games Harold used to teach me. When Floyd finished printing the paperwork, he carefully clipped each stack and slid them toward me. "Now your job is to stay quiet. Don't act different, don't say anything unusual. Let Naomi and Evan believe they're still winning." I looked out the window, where rain had started falling again. "Floyd," I said slowly, "do you ever think people show their true nature only when they feel safe?" "Always," he replied. That's why I chose this profession. We set the date for the weekend. The will reading would take place on Saturday morning at the Savannah County Courthouse. I'd arrive with Floyd and Marla. Evan and Naomi would be invited as the legal heirs to witness the full disclosure of Harold's estate. As I stood to leave, Floyd called out, "B." I turned back. He looked at me with genuine warmth. "You're not just a client. You're proof of something I've always believed. Justice often comes from the people the world sees as the weakest." I smiled, the first real smile I'd had in months. Harold always said my strength was patience. Maybe he was right. That afternoon, I went home and opened my voice recording journal again. I recorded a new entry. May 27th. I've handed all evidence to attorney Floyd Patterson. He confirmed, enough to prosecute for elder abuse and financial fraud. We'll present Harold's original will on Saturday. I'll read the transfer one last time so they think they've won, but that moment will be their confession. Everything is ready. I stopped recording and looked around the room. On the shelf, the music box sat still. The USB had been returned to Floyd, and Harold's photo was there, smiling, gentle-eyed. I whispered, as if he could still hear me. "Darling, I'm about to do what you never dared, bring justice into the light." The next 3 days, I lived slowly, as if everything were normal. Naomi kept calling, her voice sweet as syrup. "Mom, remember to dress nicely this weekend. We're taking you out to lunch," I answered. "Of course. I also have something I want to show you both." After hanging up, I looked out the window. Sunset stretched across the wet street like a mirror. A calm washed over me, the kind that comes when fear no longer has a place to hide. The next morning, Floyd texted me a short message. "Cameras, witness, and Marla are ready. Let them perform, B." I read it and nodded. In my mind, I heard Harold's voice, warm, steady. "You're stronger than you think, B." I smiled. And I knew the reckoning had already begun, not in court, but in the hearts of those who thought they'd won. Saturday arrived. It was also Evan's 40th birthday. Naomi had sent invitations a week earlier, embossed with gold letters, birthday cruise, celebrating family, success, and legacy. A fitting irony, since she had no idea that the word legacy was about to become her worst nightmare. That morning I wore the navy silk dress Harold once gave me, high collar, perfectly tailored. I pinned the silver bird brooch he'd gifted me just before he died. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman. Not the frail mother they pitied, but someone calmly preparing for Judgment Day. Floyd called at 8 a.m. "Everything's set. Once you text begin, I'll release the official statement. The LED screens on the yacht will automatically stream the live feed from the local news network." I smiled. "Perfect. Let them blow out their candles in the light of justice." The yacht, Savannah Pearl, was docked at the river pier, its lights sparkling on the water like 1,000 diamonds. As I stepped aboard, jazz music floated through the air, mingled with laughter and clinking glasses. The guests were all of Evan and Naomi's wealthy friends, business people, investors, influencers. Everyone dressed to impress, holding wine glasses, the river's glow making the scene look like a luxury commercial. Naomi came to greet me first. She wore a crimson gown, hair in a sleek bun, her smile flawless and fake. "Mom, you made it. I'm so glad. You're the second most important person today." "Second?" I asked. "Of course," she giggled, her eyes sparkling. "Evan's the first, but you give this party its meaning. I even made a special tribute video for you." I smiled gently. "How touching, Naomi. You always know how to surprise people." She didn't know the real surprise was sitting quietly inside my phone. Evan appeared next, in a smoky gray suit, looking radiant. "Mom, I'm glad you came. Things are better now, right?" "They are, son," I said warmly. "Today's special. Let's not talk about the past. Let's just celebrate." He sighed in relief, as if I'd forgiven him. Holding Naomi's hand, he turned to introduce me to his friends. "This is my mother, the woman who taught me everything about patience and responsibility." Applause rippled through the crowd. The live stream cameras panned across my face. Naomi smiled sweetly for the lens, then looked straight at me with that smug glint, certain she owned the board. I simply raised my glass and said, "Happy birthday, Evan." The party began. The yacht drifted off the dock, gliding through golden evening light. Naomi directed the film crew, every camera angle perfectly staged, white linens, a 5-tier cake, crystal flutes of champagne. A cameraman leaned toward me. "Would you like to say a few words for your son, Mrs. Langston?" I turned to the lens, smiling softly. "I just want to say, a mother is truly happy when her son learns that honesty is the greatest gift a parent can leave behind." Naomi froze for half a second, then clapped to drown out the tension. "So touching, Mom! Everyone heard that? That's why I love her so much." Evan raised his glass high. "To Mom, the strongest woman I know." Cheers erupted, glasses clinked, music swelled again. I looked at the clock. 7:17 m, right on cue. I pulled out my phone, typed 2 words, "Begin now," then hit send. Within minutes, the music cut out. A technician rushed over to whisper something to Naomi. She frowned. "What's going on?" "Why did the main screen just turn on?" Everyone turned toward the massive display mounted mid-deck where the family dinner with Grandma video had been playing earlier. Now, against a solemn musical score, bold red text appeared. "Breaking news. Savannah County Court confirms validity of Harold Langston's original will." A reporter's voice came through the speakers. According to official sources, the original will, signed by the late businessman Harold Langston on March 12, 2018, names Mrs. Beatrice Langston as the sole legal heir. All assets, including company shares, real estate, and offshore accounts, are under her rightful ownership. A murmur spread through the deck. Some guests glanced around in confusion, while the live stream cameras kept rolling, capturing every stunned face. Naomi froze. The glass in her hand slipped and shattered, red liquid spilling across the carpet like blood. Her face went white, her eyes wide, her mouth trembling. "No, that was supposed to be void." Evan turned sharply toward me, his expression a mix of disbelief and fear. "Mom, what is this?" I calmly set my glass down, my voice cool and steady. "Justice, son. Harold always believed in it." Naomi staggered back, grabbing Evan's hand, trembling. "No, I thought we—" Evan cut her off, choking on the words. "All of it? The assets, the shares, they're all yours?" I nodded. "That's right. Everything. The house you live in, the company you run. Even this yacht, it was Harold's, remember?" The air went still. Wind swept across the deck, scattering napkins and snuffing out the candles. Every camera kept rolling. Thousands watched live online, not knowing exactly what was happening, only seeing the perfect Langston family collapsing in real time. I looked at Naomi and spoke softly but firmly. "You said in your video you cared for me like your own mother, didn't you? Then you should also learn how to face consequences like an adult." Naomi trembled. Evan gripped her hand tightly, but his eyes were lost, like he'd just woken from a bad dream. I stepped closer, placed a hand on my son's shoulder. "Happy birthday, son." The words left my lips as softly as a breeze, but in that moment, Evan's entire world came crashing down. There was no more music, no more laughter, only the sound of waves hitting the hull and the crack of a fake family coming apart. Floyd called. Right then. I put him on speaker. "You did well, B. The media's picked it up. The asset freeze order is now in effect." I looked at Naomi. Her eyes went glassy, her lips trembling. "You'll pay for this." "No, Naomi," I cut in. "I'm just giving life back what it owes me." I turned away. River wind whipped my skirt, carrying the smell of salt and wine. In the distance, city lights shimmered on the water like fireworks. And I knew, somewhere, Harold was smiling. The glass hadn't finished shattering when Naomi screamed, her voice breaking between the wind and the waves slapping the boat. "No! No way! This is a setup! She staged all of it!" The live stream cameras were still on. Phone lights from the guests washed over. Naomi's face powder smudged. Mascara streaked as she kept yelling, "Turn it off! Turn it all off!" Evan slammed his hand on the table, then suddenly hurled a chair toward the rail. A sharp crack rang out, and someone in the crowd screamed. "That's enough, Evan," I said, still calm. "The more you fight it, the clearer it gets for everyone." He whipped toward me, eyes bloodshot with rage. "You ruined my life." I looked straight at him. "No, son. You did that a long time ago. Today is just the day the truth came out." The air on deck felt like it might break. Naomi crumpled to the floor, head in her hands, tears mixing with makeup. "All because of you. You always have to be right. You don't love us." I walked over slowly and leaned down. "Naomi, I did love you. I used to, but loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy your dignity." She looked up, eyes empty, then lowered her head again, shaking. Evan stood frozen, breathing hard, while the guests began to leave in silence, one by one. I left the yacht at 8:15 p.m. A light drizzle had started, cool drops tapping my hand. Behind me, Naomi's voice still carried on the wind sobs. Shouts then went quiet. I crossed the gangway without looking back. Floyd was waiting in the car. He opened the door, voice steady. "Harbor police are on their way. Everything on the yacht is recorded live stream, security cameras and witnesses. You're covered." I sat down, pulled my coat closed, and let out a long breath. "I'm not worried, Floyd. I'm just sad. No one wins in this. Not even me." He said nothing. We stayed quiet as the car pulled away from the pier. 3 days later, the story was everywhere in the local news. The Savannah Chronicle ran a front-page headline, "Langston couple under investigation for elder abuse and financial fraud." The article laid it out. Naomi Langston was being questioned for using an elderly person's image to produce fake, profit-driven content on social media and for coercing signatures on invalid documents. Her Care for My Senile Mother-in-Law videos vanished from her channel overnight, but it was too late. The internet had downloaded and reposted them everywhere. As for Evan, Langston Investments announced his temporary suspension as CEO pending an internal investigation. An emergency audit was opened, and just as Harold had predicted, shady transactions from 5 years ago began to surface. On TV, I watched Evan leave company headquarters, dodging cameras, his face stiff. A reporter asked, "Any comment on the court's decision affirming Harold Langston's original will, granting all assets to Mrs. Beatrice?" Evan answered with one flat line, voice low and tired. "I have nothing to say." Naomi disappeared from social media within days, but rumors traveled faster than silence. People said she'd been subpoenaed and ordered to return all income from videos containing fabricated elements. Brands pulled their deals. Fan pages that once praised her quietly deleted their posts. An inspiring woman fell in a single night. I watched it all from my old house, morning light slipping through the curtains, laying pale, gold bands across the wood floor. I wasn't happy or sad, I just felt things shifting back to where they belonged. Floyd stopped by at noon with a stack of paperwork. He set it on the table, voice measured. "The prosecutor recommends charges on 2 counts, coercion of an elderly person and financial fraud. But the final decision is yours." I stared at the pages for a long time. Then I picked up a pen and wrote a single line at the bottom. "I decline to pursue criminal charges. I request a public apology in the media." Floyd looked up, surprised. "Are you sure? You could have them put in jail." I nodded. "I know, but Harold taught me this. Not every victory needs a loser. I have my dignity back, and the truth is out. That's enough. That afternoon I sat on the porch and listened to the rain patter on the roof. Lydia stopped by with a warm apple pie. "I saw the news," she said, setting the box down. "You're something else. Didn't even need the courtroom to make them collapse." I smiled. I used what they never understand, patience and truth. Lydia sat beside me, pouring tea, her voice lower. "So you've won. How does it feel?" I looked out at the rain-wet yard where the white orchids bent in the breeze. "I don't feel like I've won. I just feel lighter, because I didn't answer with anger. I didn't need to smash back or shout. I let time and the law speak." Lydia nodded softly. "That's the real win." A week later, a handwritten letter arrived from Evan. Just a few lines. "Mom, I'm sorry. I have nothing to say except that I regret it. If Dad were alive, he probably wouldn't forgive me. I hope you find peace, even if I don't deserve to be in it." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Tears fell, but they weren't bitter, just clear, from someone who'd come through a storm. That night, I opened Harold's music box again. The blue Danube drifted out, gentle, sad, and beautiful. I whispered, "Do you see, Harold? We won. Not with power, not with force, but with intelligence and grace." The music echoed through the room, blending with the rain outside. I closed my eyes and breathed in deep. In that moment, I wasn't a mother betrayed or a victim of greed. I was a woman who stood up from the wreckage and used her mind and resolve to reclaim justice for herself. And I knew Harold would be proud. As for me, I could finally smile and say quietly to myself, I won. Not with violence, but with wisdom. The first morning after that storm, I woke, before the sun had pushed through the curtains. The house was so still I could hear the clock ticking, steady and slow. On the table, Harold's music box sat open, letting the last notes of the blue Danube fade. I walked to the window and drew in the scent of the after-rain air, the damp earth, the pines, and the smell of freedom. I was 69, and I had never felt this alive. That day, I went back to the community center after more than 2 months away. The old wooden door had barely opened when I heard a familiar voice. "Beatrice! Oh my goodness, you're here!" Lydia hurried over, eyes shining. She hugged me like she was afraid I might disappear again. "Beatrice, you're living proof that justice has no age. I saw everything, the news, the reports. Everyone says you're so brave." I laughed, squeezing her back. "I'm not brave, Lydia. I just got tired of being underestimated." She stepped back, looked me up and down, and nodded with approval. "But you look more radiant than ever. Isn't there a saying, leave the wrong people behind and your face glows brighter than the bathroom lights?" We both laughed. The sound filled the little room, weaving through the smell of oil paint and the jazz drifting from an old radio in the corner. The art room was unchanged. Worn easels, chipped jars of brushes, half-finished canvases on the walls. Morning sun slanted through the window, catching on dried streaks of paint and throwing tiny rainbows. Pat, the silver-haired woman with the red scarf, waved. "B, we kept your seat. Same spot by the window." I smiled, sat down, and opened my paints. The scent of color mixed with someone's mint tea made the space feel easy and kind. The young instructor, Emily, walked over and said softly, "Miss B, the center board met last week. They'd like to invite you to teach a basic painting class for the new seniors. If you're willing, we can start next month." I looked up, a little stunned. "Me?" "Yes. Who better to inspire people?" Emily grinned. "They said if a 69-year-old woman can start again, no one's too late to pick up a brush." I glanced around the room at my friends leaning over their palettes, chatting quietly. My heart stirred. I smiled and nodded. "All right, I'll teach. But not flowers or still life. I'll teach them how to paint themselves." The weeks slid by as gently as a stream. Each morning I walked to the center with a small basket of pastries and a thermos of tea. Lydia waited at the gate with her old yellow umbrella. We called it the journey to find color again. In class, I taught how to mix light, how to use a fine brush for small details. Some painted skies, some their front yards. I just drew simple curves, like scars that had closed. Every stroke was a wound soothed, a memory forgiven. Once, as we arranged paintings for the center's little exhibit, Lydia asked, "B, if Evan and Naomi come to apologize, will you forgive them?" I stayed quiet for a while. Then said, "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, Lydia. It just means you won't let the past drive your life anymore." She nodded, sighing softly. "I wish I'd learned that sooner." "We all learn late," I said. "At least we learn." She smiled at that, and I realized her smile, like mine, was the kind of light that only comes after very long nights. One afternoon, I lingered after class, while the sunset turned the brick wall reddish gold. On my easel sat a new painting, an older woman with silver hair standing among white orchids, sunlight across her shoulder. Her smile was calm, needing no audience, no approval. I titled it Reborn at 69. When I signed the corner, my hand didn't shake. I knew the lines were more than color, they were proof I could still create, still live, still begin again. That evening I got home late. Moonlight lay across the wooden steps, crickets singing in the yard. I brewed chamomile tea and opened the window. Cool air drifted in with the smell of earth and rustling leaves. On the table, Harold's music box waited silent, but ready to sing at the lightest touch. I whispered, "Harold, do you see? I'm still here, still painting, still smiling, still living." I smiled, laid a hand over my heart, and felt my pulse steady and strong. At 69, I no longer dream of distant things. All I wish for each morning is sunlight streaming through the window, a warm cup of tea, and the laughter of my friends at the community center. Because, as it turns out, true happiness doesn't come from holding on, it comes from knowing when to let go, so the soul can breathe and kindness can bloom. I set my teacup down and looked out at the garden, where the wind was gently stirring the white orchids. And in that soft, dim light, I saw it clearer than ever before. Life, even after all the scars, can still be beautiful. Every mark, every crack, proof that we have lived, endured, and been reborn. That afternoon, a light rain fell over Savannah. It wasn't heavy, just enough to blur the window pane and fill the house with the scent of damp wood and tea. I was at my table, adjusting the frame of Reborn at 69 to send to the community center's exhibit, when a knock came at the door, slow, hesitant, like the person behind it wasn't sure they should be there. I wiped my hands and opened it. Evan stood on the porch, shirt soaked through, face worn and older. In the fading light, I saw strands of gray in his hair, the kind I once thought only his father would have. In his hand was a brown envelope, damp from the rain, its corners creased and softened. "I know you don't want to see me." His voice was hoarse. "But please, Mom, just a few minutes." I stayed quiet, then stepped aside. "Come in, it's raining." My son stepped in, still wearing his wet shoes, afraid to dirty the floor. That small gesture, so careful, softened something in me. I poured him a cup of hot tea and set it on the table. The rising steam blurred his face. Evan placed the envelope down and slid it toward me. "Mom, I brought this. I think you should see it." I opened the envelope. Inside were a few old photos, the ones I thought had been lost when Harold was still alive. Evan at 10 years old, standing on Tybee Beach, his small hand gripping his father's, both smiling, the sunlight glinting off the waves behind them. I touched the photo gently, memories flooding in like the tide. Harold teaching Evan how to skip stones, racing him down the shore, their laughter carrying through the salt air. Beneath the photos was a folded sheet of paper. I opened it. The handwriting trembled, the ink smudged by rain or tears. "Mom, I don't know where to begin. It took me too long to see how far I'd gone wrong. When Dad died, I thought I had to be strong to hold everything together, the company, the money, the family's image. But I forgot what mattered most, you. I forgot who you are. Forgot the woman who taught me what's right and what's enough. I'm sorry. Not because I lost everything, but because I made you carry the pain. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just hope that one day I can look at you without seeing disappointment in your eyes. Evan." I set the letter down, my hand trembling slightly. Outside, the rain thickened, each drop tapping the window frame, steady as a clock. "Mom." Evan's eyes were red. "I don't know what else to say. Since the court ruling, I've lost my job. Naomi left with Leo, but 2 weeks ago, she brought him back, said a boy needs his father." His voice cracked. I realized then I had almost become the man I used to despise most, someone blinded by greed. I stayed silent, watching the tea between us. The steam still rose, but it was fading. "Mom," he continued softly, "I remember something Dad once said. Evan, if you don't know how to keep your integrity, don't expect to keep anything else. I didn't understand it when I was young. But now I do. Losing my job, my name, I finally see he was right. And so were you." He drew a breath, almost whispering now. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let Naomi lead me. I'm sorry I forgot that everything I ever had started with Dad's 2 hands and your forgiveness." I looked at my son, the same man who once stood tall in arrogance, whose words had once shattered me, now sitting there. Shoulders slumped, head bowed. What I saw was not weakness, but a man finally learning the cost of pride. I stood, went to the wooden cabinet and opened the drawer. Inside was Harold's handwritten letter, the one I'd kept since the day he died. I took it out and placed it beside Evan's. "Do you know what your father wrote in this?" Evan shook his head. I opened it and read slowly. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't ever let grief make you lose faith in family. Even if Evan loses his way, he'll find it back someday. When he does, don't close the door. Because sometimes forgiveness is the greatest inheritance of all." Evan bowed his head, tears dripping onto his hand. I folded the letter and placed it in his palm. "You see," I said softly, "your father still believed you could be good again, and so do I. But apologies aren't enough. If you mean it, teach Leo to be kind, to know right from wrong, to love. That's how you earn back what you lost." Evan looked up, his eyes wet, but this time I saw understanding there, not guilt. "Mom, I promise. I can't undo everything, but I'll raise Leo differently. I'll tell him about Grandpa, about you, and about what greed costs." I smiled gently, my lips trembling. "That's enough, son. That's all I need." We sat in silence for a long while. Rain whispered outside like the past, breathing softly through time. Evan stood, picked up the envelope of photos, then set it back on the table. "I'll leave these with you. I think Dad would want you to keep them." At the door, he turned, eyes lowered. "Mom, can I visit sometimes?" I looked at him, my heart calm as a lake after the storm. "This door was never locked, Evan. But don't come alone, bring Leo, so he'll know that his mother once made mistakes, but his grandparents chose another way to live." Evan pressed his lips together and nodded, tears falling freely now. I watched him until his figure disappeared beyond the rain-wet pines. When the door closed, I turned back inside and picked up the photo of Harold and Evan on the beach. Harold was smiling that smile I had loved my whole life, and Evan, just a boy then, eyes bright and full of wonder. I touched the photo lightly and whispered, "Do you see, Harold? He's come back. Maybe clumsy, maybe late, but he's learning to be a man again." A single tear fell, not from sorrow but release. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving only the drip of water from the eaves clear and steady. I slid the photo into a frame and placed it beside the music box. When the Blue Danube played again, my heart felt weightless because at last what had broken in my family was being mended by the simplest thing of all: forgiveness. In the days after Evan's visit, the house returned to its quiet rhythm. But I noticed the emptiness inside me had grown lighter. Each morning, I still brewed tea, opened the windows to let in the light, and listened to the sparrows tapping at the eaves. Life, which I once thought had closed at 69, had merely turned a page into a gentler, quieter, but deeply meaningful chapter. That day, while teaching art at the community center, Lydia arrived holding a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. "B," she said softly, "today's the anniversary of Harold's passing, isn't it?" I paused, then nodded. 10 years had passed since he left, yet the memory was still vivid. I looked at the paint tubes on the table and suddenly felt the urge to do something. "I'm going to paint him," I said quietly but firmly. "A portrait, one last time." That evening I came home early. The art room was filled with sunset light. I set the easel by the window, where the late sun could just reach the canvas. On the table, I laid out my brushes, palette, and an old photo of Harold, my favorite, him standing in the yard, sleeves rolled, smiling gently, eyes bright with faith. I sat down, took a deep breath, and dipped my brush in warm brown paint. The first stroke trembled, my hand wasn't as steady as before, but my heart had never been steadier. I spoke softly, as if he were beside me. "Harold, you once told me to paint again. For years, I painted to forget. Today, I paint to remember." Each stroke was a memory: his laugh on the porch, the tap on the door when breakfast was ready, his hand on my shoulder when I trembled during that first court hearing after losing him. I blended blue into the background, a touch of soft yellow for light, and deep walnut brown for his eyes. Harold's gaze slowly appeared gentle, calm, forgiving. My chest tightened, but not with pain, only warmth, as if he was standing just behind me, watching every stroke. When Lydia arrived, I was still at the easel, silver hair falling over my shoulders. She stood there for a long moment, then breathed, "B, it's the most beautiful painting I've ever seen. Not because of technique, but because it's alive." I smiled, set my brush down, and looked at the portrait once more. In it, Harold stood slightly turned, light behind him casting a faint halo around his frame. I had already given it a title, "The Man Behind Justice." Because to me, Harold wasn't just a husband, he was the solid ground beneath my feet, the one who stood behind me whenever I faced the world's darkness. Lydia's eyes glistened. "This has to be displayed, B. Not hidden away. It's a story." I turned to her, eyes deep with memory. "Maybe you're right, but for me it's also a goodbye, a kind one." That night, I placed the painting in the living room, across from Harold's music box. The soft lamplight glowed against the oak frame, and his eyes seemed almost alive. I poured a glass of red wine, sat down, and gazed at it like one looks back at a whole life. "Do you see, Harold?" I whispered. I kept my promise. I didn't let pain become hatred. I turned it into strength. Outside, the wind brushed the curtains, carrying the scent of orchids from the porch. I wound the music box. The Blue Danube played again, smooth and round like the old days. The melody blended with the ticking clock, like the heartbeat of the house, steady, peaceful. The next day, I brought the painting to the center. When everyone saw it, they fell silent, then began to clap. Pat said, "B, I can see Harold through your eyes. Not just him, but the kindness you carry." Emily, the young instructor, stood quietly, voice trembling. "If I ever tell my students about courage, I'll tell them about you. Not because you defeated anyone, but because you chose not to become like them." I only smiled and bowed my head. Lydia touched the frame, turned to me, and said, "Beatrice, he must be so proud." I whispered, "So am I, Lydia, because I finally found a way to say goodbye, not with tears, but with color. At dusk, after the exhibit ended, I stayed alone in the gallery. The soft yellow light fell across the painting, bringing Harold's face to life, and I realized I no longer felt pain when I looked at him. What I felt was gratitude. Because he'd left me more than a marriage, he'd left me faith. That justice always has someone standing behind it, and that goodness always wins in the end. I touched the corner of the frame and smiled, then turned and walked out. Sunlight streamed through the doorway, painting my hair in silver. Life, after all its storms, still offered a place to return to the one we create with trembling hands and an unshaken heart. That night, before bed, I hung Harold's portrait back in its place beside the window facing the garden. I whispered to the wind, "Rest easy, Harold, I've made it through. And I'm still standing because of you." A soft breeze brushed the canvas, making it quiver lightly. I closed my eyes and listened to my heartbeat, slow, steady, at peace. I knew then this wasn't just my final painting. It was the closing period of a chapter that ended in quiet grace. On Monday morning, while I was tending to my orchids on the porch, the phone rang. A woman's voice came through, gentle yet full of energy. "Hello, Mrs. Beatrice Langston. This is Michelle from Savannah Local News. The community center told us about you, the woman who teaches art and just held the exhibit The Man Behind Justice. Would you be willing to join us for an interview? We're producing a feature on elder abuse." I froze for a second. The word abuse still made my heart tighten. I looked toward Harold's portrait hanging in the living room, sunlight glinting off the oak frame. "All right," I said, my voice calm but firm. "If my story can help someone else stand up, I'll do it." 2 days later, the film crew came to my house. The small living room had been neatly arranged, soft lights falling on Harold's portrait behind me. Michelle, the young reporter, sat across from me, notebook in hand, and asked softly, "Mrs. Beatrice, what made you agree to share your story?" I smiled, my hand resting lightly on a cup of chamomile tea. "Because there are so many people like me, Michelle. So many older folks treated like burdens, deceived, used, and taken for granted. But we stay silent, thinking that love means endurance. I wanted to tell them, love should never mean bowing your head." Michelle nodded, admiration shining in her eyes. "So, where did your story begin?" I took a deep breath. The camera light made everything in the room feel slower, more deliberate. Then I told her slowly, clearly about what had happened. How my daughter-in-law pressured me to sign an insurance paper. How my son stood by silently. How I pretended to be confused. And how a blue envelope from Harold changed everything. I never mentioned Evan or Naomi by name. I only said, "It's the story of a mother once dismissed by the people she loved most until she realized she didn't need to be weak to be loved." When the feature aired, I never expected it to reach so many people. At first, it was just an 8-minute segment titled "The Woman Who Wouldn't Bow, a Story of Courage at 69. Michelle stood before the camera, her voice warm and steady. In a world where old age is often seen as a time to rest, some still fight not to reclaim wealth, but to reclaim dignity. My image appeared on screen, a silver-haired woman sitting in a bright room, Harold's portrait behind her. I was smiling, calm, no bitterness left. I remembered the final question of the interview. If you could send a message to older people facing injustice, what would it be? And I had answered, with all my conviction, "Don't let anyone tell you you're too old to start again. Age isn't the end of a great story. It's a chapter you have the right to rewrite with courage." Within 2 days of airing, the TV station was flooded with messages and letters. A woman from North Carolina wrote, "Mrs. Beatrice, I watched your story with my mother." She cried, then called me over to hug her. "Thank you for helping us understand each other again." A man from Texas emailed, "I once signed over my house to my son without reading the papers. Now I've hired a lawyer to review them." Thank you for giving me back my courage. And children ones I'd never met sent drawings of an old woman with silver hair holding a paintbrush standing before a glowing painting. One little girl had scribbled beneath her drawing, "Grandma B fights with kindness." I sat for a long time staring at those words. Harold once told me, "You'll never win with resentment." Now I finally understood he was right. A week later, Michelle called again. "Mrs. B, did you know? Your story's gone statewide. The network's calling you Grandma of Justice." I laughed, nearly spilling my tea. Grandma of Justice? Oh dear, that sounds like a movie character. Michelle chuckled over the phone. It's true, though. People aren't just admiring you for winning, they admire you for not seeking revenge. They say you make them believe goodness still exists. I paused for a moment, then replied, "If that's true, then I'm only keeping alive the flame Harold once lit. I'm just the one making sure it doesn't go out." The next day, the community center hung a photo of me in the main hall, with a handwritten line from Lydia underneath. She stood tall when the world tried to bend her. People started calling me by that new nickname, half joking, half proud, Grandma of Justice. At first, it embarrassed me. But I learned to smile, because I knew the title wasn't just for me, it belonged to every woman who once suffered in silence and now dares to speak up. That evening, when I got home, I replayed the news segment, watching it alone. When my face appeared on the screen, I didn't see an old, weary woman anymore. I saw a survivor, and more than that, someone who chose forgiveness without surrender. On the table sat Evan's letter, still framed. I whispered, "Son, I didn't mention your name, because this story isn't meant to hurt anyone. It's just to remind people that sometimes justice isn't found in court, it's in how we keep choosing to be good, even after being betrayed." Outside, the wind carried the scent of night orchids through the porch. I smiled, took a sip of tea, and felt a peace deeper than I'd ever known. At 69, I never imagined I'd appear on television, much less become a symbol of anything. But sometimes, all it takes is one person refusing to bow, and the whole world has to look up. One early April morning, as the orchids in my garden began to bloom, I received a pale yellow envelope. In the upper left corner was a familiar handwritten line that made my heart tighten. "For Mrs. Beatrice Langston, private." I held it, caught between curiosity and fear. For 10 years, every time I saw Floyd Patterson's handwriting, I thought of Harold. Floyd had been our family's attorney and the only person Harold trusted besides me. When I opened the door, Floyd was standing on the porch, wearing his old fedora. He still moved with that slow, steady calm, but his eyes carried something new emotion he couldn't hide. "Hello, Mrs. B," he said softly. "I was sorting Harold's old files in storage. There's a letter he left marked, 'To be delivered only when Beatrice has overcome everything.' I think now is that time." I froze. Overcome everything. The phrase echoed inside me like a long bell toll. I had faced betrayal, tears, courtrooms, and forgiveness. Had Harold somehow known all of this would happen? I invited Floyd inside. He set the envelope. On the table, right beneath Harold's portrait, the same one I'd displayed at the community center the week before. Morning light streamed through the window, glowing softly across Harold's face in the painting, serene, gentle, as if smiling at us. "I'll let you read it alone," Floyd said, his voice rough. Harold always said that, in the end, light is the only thing worth keeping. He left, and I was alone with the faded yellow envelope. I sat down, took a deep breath, and carefully broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten page, slightly yellowed, its corners creased. The first line made my breath catch. "My dearest B, if you're reading this, it means you have won, not with vengeance, but with light." Tears welled instantly. "I know life will test you more times than you imagine, not through loss, but through betrayal. Don't be afraid, Bee. People can only betray us because we once trusted them, and that trust is the most beautiful part of you. If someday Evan hurts you, remember I never truly left. I made sure you'd have enough proof not just to win, but to stay yourself. I don't want you to seek revenge. I want you to stand tall, head high, and let justice speak for us. When you choose light, you save our son. I pressed a trembling hand to my lips and kept reading. I love the way you stay gentle without being weak, the way you forgive without ever forgetting. I believe that even without me, you'll teach Evan what I never had time to teach him, that compassion is stronger than power. And if you ever feel alone, open our music box. It's not just a melody, it's my heartbeat, still around you. In this house, in every breeze, every drop of rain on the porch. The last line shook slightly, as if Harold had written it knowing his time was short. Keep living, Bee, not for me, but for those who still need to know that kindness isn't extinct. I will love you forever, Harold. I folded the letter and held it to my chest. Every sound around me faded away, only my heartbeat and the wind outside remained. I cried not from sorrow, but from the release of a knot I'd carried for years. I placed the letter beside Harold's portrait. Sunlight streamed through the glass, making his painted eyes glimmer like real ones. "You're still here, aren't you?" I whispered. "Still watching me, just like before." A soft breeze slipped through the window, stirring the curtain. The gentle tune of the Blue Danube began from the music box on the shelf. I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall freely, and in that breeze I could almost hear Harold's laugh, low, kind, and full of grace. That afternoon I called Evan. "Son, I just wanted you to know your father left me a letter. He mentioned you. And I believe if he were here, he'd say the same thing. You can still start over." Evan was silent for a long while, then said softly, "Mom, I'll come this weekend. I want Leo to meet Grandpa, even if it's only through the painting." I smiled. Good. His grandpa would love that. Later that evening, I sat on the porch, watching the orchids sway in the wind. The savannah sky turned a soft amber, clouds stretched like silk. On the table, Harold's letter lay open, its words glowing in the fading light. I read the first line again. "If you're reading this, it means you have won, not with vengeance, but with light." I smiled. Yes, I had won. Not because I was richer, stronger, or celebrated on television, but because I had kept the most precious thing of all, the unbroken heart of someone who still knew how to love. The evening breeze brushed my hair. I looked toward the window where Harold's portrait stood, bathed in sunset. His smile seemed to fill the whole room. "Thank you, Harold," I whispered, "for teaching me that justice isn't about striking back, it's about living better than those who hurt you." I folded the letter, placed it on the wooden frame, and went to make tea. In the wind, I could almost hear a voice, soft, distant, but clear. "I'm still here, Bee." I turned toward the porch and smiled. The last light of the day touched the portrait's frame, and I knew though he'd been gone 10 years, his love still lived in every peaceful breath I had left. A year passed since the day I received Harold's final letter. Time, the quietest teacher, had gently healed even the deepest wounds. I no longer lived in the Langston estate. I sold it, the house heavy with memories and tears, and bought a small apartment by Forsyth Lake. Just 2 rooms, a tiny balcony, and a view of the water shimmering in the afternoon light. I hung white curtains, placed orchids by the window, and every morning when sunlight poured in, I felt weightless. No more echoing footsteps on the wooden floors, no old clocks ticking through the night. Here, there was only the sound of water lapping the shore, ducks calling in the distance, and brushes touching canvas. It was the sound of a new life, simple, free, and quiet enough to finally hear myself. One summer morning, Evan knocked on my door. He was no longer the man in a tailored suit driving a sports car. Now he wore a plain t-shirt that read "Community First," his wrist still streaked with pale blue paint. "Sorry I'm late, Mom," he said, slightly out of breath but smiling. "Our group just finished repainting the nursing home downtown." I looked at his hands calloused, speckled with dried paint, and my heart warmed. "How long have you been volunteering?" I asked, pouring him tea. "Almost 6 months," he said. "They've got me teaching computer skills to seniors. Turns out, I actually love it." He smiled a real smile, more genuine than any I'd ever seen from him before. "You know, Mom," Evan said, gazing out at the lake, "I used to think happiness meant having money. Now I see peace is the most expensive thing there is." I nodded silently, grateful to Harold for leaving our son not only a letter, but a living example of integrity and compassion. Naomi had changed, too. I hadn't seen her since the trial, but a few months ago she sent me a short letter, no flourishes, no excuses. "Mrs. Beatrice, I've left social media. I started learning how to bake and took a part-time job at a small coffee shop near my place. I know I was wrong, and I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a bit of peace like you have." When I finished reading, I didn't feel anger or bitterness. I simply smiled. Because sometimes, peace doesn't come from seeing someone pay for what they've done, but from knowing they truly understand what they've lost. I, too, began a new chapter of my own. After the broadcast of "The Woman Who Wouldn't Bow," letters poured in from women, men, the young and the old. But one thought kept weighing on me: the elderly women who were deceived by their own families, losing their homes, their rights, and their dignity without knowing where to turn for help. One evening, while looking at Harold's old envelope, the idea came into focus. I decided to establish the Harold Langston Foundation, a legal and emotional support fund for older women whose assets had been taken from them. Floyd helped me prepare the paperwork, while Lydia and our art group at the community center volunteered as secretaries, communications staff, and event organizers for small fundraisers. On opening day, there was no grand celebration. Just a small room with a wooden sign, a few white orchids, and one line I painted on the wall myself: "No one has the right to take away a mother's dignity." When I finished writing that line, I cried, not because of the past, but because I knew this time my tears tasted of rebirth. In the afternoons, I often sit on my balcony watching the lake change color under the sunday. Sometimes Lydia visits, bringing freshly baked apple pie. Sometimes Evan comes with Leo to fly kites. That 7-year-old boy runs across the grass shouting, "Grandma Bea, look! Mine's flying the highest." I smile and look up. In the wide blue sky, the small kite dances, the string in my hand tight with wind. And I think maybe that's the story of my life too. Once blown away, once broken, yet still able to rise again light and free. At night, I light a small candle beneath Harold's photo on the wall. The flame flickers, casting moving shadows over the words painted there. "No one has the right to take away a mother's dignity," I whisper. "Do you see, Harold? I did what you hoped I would. Not just to stand up, but to help others stand with me." Outside, crickets sing softly, the breeze passing through the orchids by the window, carrying their gentle scent. I take a sip of tea and murmur, 1 year has passed, and everything has finally found its rightful place. When the moonlight reflects off the lake, I open the old music box again. The Blue Danube plays, its notes circling through the air like memories. I lean back, close my eyes, and let the melody wash through me. Life doesn't have to be perfect to be whole. All it takes is knowing when to let go, whom to love, and how to keep your dignity. That's enough to call it a victory. One early autumn morning, as the trees around the lake began to turn gold, I received an invitation from the community center. Autumn Art Exhibition. Theme: The Return of Light. Below it was a handwritten note from Lydia, her letters round and neat, B, we'd like to display your painting, The Woman Behind Justice, at the center of the exhibit. It's not just a painting, it's our story. I sat at my table for a long while, looking at the card. The Return of Light, such a simple, beautiful title. Perhaps nothing could describe my journey better, from the darkness of betrayal to the gentle glow of forgiveness. On opening day, the hall glowed with the gold of lamps and autumn leaves. The Woman Behind Justice hung in the center, framed in polished oak, soft light falling over Harold's eyes. Beside it, a small plaque read, "A portrait painted by Beatrice Langston, age 69, founder of the Harold Langston Foundation, symbolizing the strength of compassion and resilience in justice." I stood quietly, a wave of emotion swelling inside me. That painting had once been born from pain, had once made me cry, but now it shone among the crowd, like Harold himself standing behind me, lighting the path ahead. Lydia came up beside me, holding my hand. "B, do you see? People stop the longest in front of your painting." I smiled. "It's not because it's beautiful, Lydia. It's because it's true." Through the crowd, I saw Evan and Leo walking toward me. Evan wore a white shirt, his hair neatly trimmed, holding his son's small hand. Leo's brown eyes sparkled as he looked around in wonder. They stopped in front of the painting. Evan stayed silent for a while, lips pressed tight. I saw his hand tremble, not from shame but from emotion. "That's your grandpa, Leo," I said, kneeling beside him. "He's the one who taught me how to love and how to fight." The boy gazed at the painting. "Grandpa's smile is really gentle, Grandma." I smiled, brushing his hair. Yes, he always smiled like that, even when things were hard. He believed light always returns as long as we keep looking for it. Leo turned to his father. "Dad, do you fight like Grandpa too?" Evan bit his lip, his voice low and shaky. "I forgot how once, son, but thanks to Grandma I remembered. I looked at my son." Our eyes met, no words, just a nod, as if forgiveness had finally come full circle. That whole afternoon, we stood together before the painting. Visitors took photos, asked questions, and offered congratulations, but for me the most beautiful moment wasn't under the lights or the camera. Flashes, it was when Leo gently placed his little hand on the wooden frame and said softly, "I want to grow up like Grandpa to protect the people I love." My throat tightened. That tiny hand, belonging to an innocent child, made my heart tremble just like the first time Harold told me, "B, live to do what's right, not what's easy." When the exhibition ended, I stayed alone in the quiet hall. The yellow light cast a warm glow across Harold's face, just like the last afternoon we shared together. I whispered, like a farewell, "Do you see, Harold? The light truly has returned, not just in the painting, but in your son, in your grandson, and in my heart." Outside the glass window, sunset fell across the distant lake, leaving a long, golden reflection. I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt that every unfinished part of my life had finally been touched by light. One October afternoon, rain began to fall over Savannah. It wasn't cold, but steady, like the sky was gently washing away the last of old memories. I was by the window, making tea and sorting through photos from the exhibition, when a soft knock came at the door. I set my cup down and opened it. Standing on the porch, under the misty rain, was a thin figure in a worn coat. Her hair was messy, her face pale, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. It took me a moment to recognize her. It was Naomi. She stood still, hands trembling. "Hello, Mrs. Beatrice." Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I said nothing. Rain slid down my silver hair, while her face was streaked with both rain and tears, indistinguishable from each other. "May I come in for a moment?" she asked, her eyes pleading. I nodded. "Come in." The room was warm under soft light. Naomi stood near the doorway, hesitant to sit. I poured her tea, set it on the table, and sat across from her. She lifted the cup, but her hands shook so badly that tea spilled over the rim. I handed her a napkin. She wiped her hands, trembling, then spoke softly. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Beatrice. I know I don't deserve to be here, but I didn't know who else to talk to." I stayed silent and let her speak. Outside, the rain tapped gently on the roof like a metronome of memory. "I've lost everything," she said, her voice breaking. "After everything came out, my media company was blacklisted. No one would hire me. Friends disappeared. I worked as a maid in a motel, then helped at a bakery. And Leo? I only see him on weekends." She bowed her head, tears soaking into the tablecloth. "I used to think I had it all, that I was smart, sharper than everyone else. But I was the biggest fool of all. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. I know after what I've done, that's too much. I just wanted to say, I truly regret it." I looked at the woman before me, the once glamorous daughter-in-law who flaunted expensive dresses and false smiles. Now she was just a small, broken woman, emptied of pride and tears. "Naomi," I said slowly, "if you came to hear that everything's in the past, then yes, it is. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean returning." She looked up, her eyes wet and trembling. "I don't want to go back. I want to make things right. I saw you on TV talking about helping older women who were deceived. If you'd let me, I want to help." I was speechless for a moment. Naomi, the woman who once measured everything by money, now wanted to help protect the elderly from abuse. Life truly has its own harsh ways of teaching. "I once made my own mother-in-law live like she had no rights," she said, her voice shaking. "Now I want to help women like her. Not so you'll forgive me, but so I can look in the mirror each morning without hating myself." I looked into her eyes, no arrogance left, only exhaustion and a desperate wish to start over. "You once had everything, Naomi, but you lost the most important thing: compassion. Forgiveness isn't about going back. It's about learning not to repeat." She broke down crying, her shoulders trembling. I didn't move to comfort her. I just placed my hand on the table, letting silence do the talking for both of us. After a long pause, Naomi lifted her head, her voice hoarse. "I understand. Thank you for still talking to me. I won't ask to stay. I just needed to say what's in my heart." I nodded. "You can come to the center anytime. Lydia always needs help with paperwork." "But only if you truly want to help, not to be seen." She smiled through tears, a weak smile, but the most genuine I'd ever seen on her. "I promise, Mrs. Beatrice. I won't disappoint you again." When Naomi stood to leave, the rain had stopped. Soft evening light filtered through the window, glinting off the droplets still clinging to her hair. I walked her to the porch. She turned back and bowed deeply. "Thank you for still being good even when I wasn't." I replied quietly, "Good people aren't those who've never been hurt, Naomi. They're the ones who don't let pain turn them cruel." That sentence wasn't just for her, it was for all of us who've lived through loss. Which moment in this meeting touched you the most? Was it the apology, the tears, or the words, "Good people don't let pain turn them cruel"? Write a few thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear from you. Because maybe every parent understands this feeling. She wept, then turned and walked away. Her figure grew smaller under the fading light, disappearing down the rain-wet street, slow, solitary, yet somehow lighter. I stood there watching, no anger, no resentment left. Only a quiet ache, like seeing a wilted flower still trying to stand against the wind. I turned back inside, resting my hand on Harold's photo. "Do you see, Harold?" I whispered. Even Naomi has learned how to bow, but this time not to hurt anyone. Outside, the wind passed through the orchids, soft and warm, and in that moment, I understood sometimes forgiveness isn't the end, it's the beginning of awakening. A month after meeting Naomi, the morning sky over Savannah was crystal clear. Sunlight shimmered across the lake, spilling through the white curtains of my small apartment. On the table lay a folder stamped in red, "Official Registration, the Harold Langston Foundation." I touched the seal, feeling my heartbeat steady and strong. Everything that began as pain had now transformed into an act of light. Floyd, the old lawyer and dear friend who had once stood beside Harold, arrived earlier than planned. He placed a large envelope on the table and smiled. "Congratulations, B. Harold would be proud to know that the woman he loved turned loss into hope for others." I nodded softly. "It's not just mine, Floyd. This is something we've all carried together." The launch ceremony for the Harold Langston Foundation was held at the community center where it had all begun. The room was full. The elderly art students, women who had once lost everything to deceit, and young volunteers. At the front, Harold's black and white photo stood on a simple wooden easel. Beneath it, the words, "In memory of Harold Langston, a man who believed that justice begins at home." I stepped up to the podium. But before speaking, I saw Evan sitting in the front row, Naomi beside him. Both quiet, both listening with humble eyes. On Evan's lap sat Leo, holding a handmade sign that read, in uneven crayon letters, "Go Grandma B." Warmth spread through my chest. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice a little shaky, "I'm not a hero, and I'm not unbreakable. I'm just a woman who was once hurt by her own family, and because of that, I learned what real strength is." The room fell silent. I looked over at Harold's photo, then continued. "Justice isn't just for revenge. Justice is for healing. It helps us get back up, not to strike back, but to restore our faith in ourselves and in people." Applause broke out. I saw Lydia wipe her eyes, and Floyd give a small nod. After the speech, Floyd stepped up to announce the first donation. The Harold Langston Foundation is officially launching with $50,000 donated by Evan Langston. The hall gasped, then grew quietly moved. Evan stood and spoke briefly. "I can't erase past mistakes, but I can start over by doing what's right." I looked at my son. His eyes were different now. No arrogance, only sincerity and responsibility. I knew that if Harold were here, he would be smiling. Naomi came forward too. She wore a simple white shirt, her hair tied low, her face still gaunt but her eyes clear. "I'll handle communications for the foundation," she said, "so people know that even after we fall we can still become part of something good." I smiled at her. "Welcome back, Naomi." This time, facing the right light. The ceremony ended with long applause. I stood by the window, watching the older folks and the young people leave with eased faces. Outside, sunlight shone on the new sign in front of the center, Harold Langston Foundation, for dignity, for justice, for hope. For dignity, for justice, for hope. I pressed a hand to my chest and heard my heart beat calmly. In the end, what Harold left wasn't just assets or a will, it was a legacy of trust and dignity. When everyone had gone, Evan came to me and spoke softly. "Mom, I understood something today. The justice Dad believed in, it isn't in the courthouse. It's right here in the human heart." I smiled and put a hand on his shoulder. "That's right, Evan. And today, you found it." The last light of day washed our faces in warm gold. In that moment, I saw clearly the light Harold spoke of had truly returned, not just in the foundation, but in each person who had walked through the dark with me. Now I live in a small apartment by Lake Oglethorpe, where mornings are drenched in golden sun, and evenings lay gentle reflections on the drooping willows. Each day drifts by as lightly as leaves brushing the water. I wake when the air is still misty. First thing, I brew a pot of jasmine tea and set it on the wooden table by the window, watching dawn sparkle across the lake. I'm no longer rushed or wary like before. My life is made of slow rhythms now, the soft boil of water, the whisper of a brush across canvas, the faint scent of oil paint in a small room. On the east wall, I've hung the paintings I've made over the past 3 years: The Woman Behind Justice, The Return of Light, Mother and Boy by the Lake. Each one is a story, a wound that has healed yet still warm with the days of pain. In the afternoons, I usually sit out on the porch with my sketchbook. Some days Lydia drops by with apple pie and laughs like a child. Some days Evan brings Leo, and the three of us feed the ducks on the grass. Leo is 8 now, bright-eyed and smiling as ever. He doesn't know how rough the past once was, and I don't need him to know. Some things only matter in this way: that the next generation gets to live in the light. Naomi sometimes visits with a few magazines featuring the foundation. She talks little, works hard, and weighs every word. I don't ask whether she's truly forgiven herself. Maybe, like me, she's learning to live again quietly, through actions. At night, the apartment holds only the clock's tick and the faint scent of cooling tea. I turn on the desk lamp and paint the last strokes of Woman by the Lake. In it, I paint myself silver hair, brush in hand, the lake in the distance reflecting the moon. But the face isn't sad. It holds a peace I never had for most of my life. Sometimes I look up at Harold's photo on the wooden shelf. "If you were still here," I ask softly, "would you smile?" I almost hear him laugh, that warm, low chuckle carried in on the breeze through the window. And I know he would, because at last I'm living for myself. Not to fight anyone, not to prove anything. Simply to live with freedom and gratitude. When dusk falls, the day's last light glides over the lake in a silk-bright ribbon of gold. I set the brush down, sip my tea, and smile. From afar, a child's laughter rings out, probably Leo playing with the ducks. The wind stirs the willows into a hush, like a familiar voice whispering, "You did it, Bee. You found your light again." I gaze at the water, my heart astonishingly calm. Life, it turns out, doesn't need noise or glory. It only asks that, in the end, we can lift our heads, smile, and say to ourselves, "I went through the storm, and I'm still whole." That night, I sat alone by the window, the lake holding the silver moon like a quiet mirror. The apartment around me was still, the wind slipping through the curtains like the breath of old memories. On the table, Woman by the Lake had dried the final stroke, just finished. I set the brush down and whispered, "Harold, I've lived fully, just as you hoped." The desk lamp's glow fell over his photo, and his eyes seemed to smile. I understood that there's no ending that's truly sad, only people brave enough to step forward into new light. Outside, a distant church bell marked midnight. I brewed another pot of tea and poured it into 2 cups out of habit, one for me and one for Harold. With every warm sip, gratitude settled quietly in my chest, grateful for another chance at life. Grateful for the wounds that taught me how to stand. Grateful even for those who hurt me, because through them, I learned the true worth of kindness. I'm not afraid of time anymore. Each morning I see my face in the mirror, lined with age, but peaceful in a way youth never knew. I live slowly, keep a journal, paint, and sometimes just sit and listen to the wind. Across the water. If anyone asks what makes me happiest at 69, I'll say, to live true to my heart and still believe in good. I close my sketchbook and look out the window once more. The breeze carries the scent of tea, of wood, and the gentle sound of this new life. I smile, knowing that somewhere, Harold is smiling too. Thank you for teaching me that justice isn't an ending, it's the beginning of healing. Then I turn back to the table and light a small candle beside his photo, letting that flame keep burning like a faith that never goes out inside me. If you've stayed with me to the end, thank you truly. My story may be fiction, but the feelings and the lessons about family, dignity, and resilience are real. Where are you in the world? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know how far this journey has traveled. And if you've faced loss or betrayal, remember, the light always returns, as long as you believe in yourself. Please, like, subscribe, and stay for the next stories about kindness, grit, and a faith that never fades. I'm Beatrice Langston, and I believe that when we live with generosity, we've already won it all.